moderator, and welcome to the 2024 Madison Town Meeting. We are returning after an adjournment following the voting on Tuesday, and we are initiating the regular town meeting portion of today's events. I'm going to ask the supervisors to suspend the check-in for just a moment. And if you'd all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. If you have not yet done so, please do go through the line and check in for receipt of your ballot, biggest ballot that I remember. Nice hefty ballot in case of any secret ballots being required during the course of the day. We also use this and the green envelope to be held up in the air because virtually all of our votes will be held by hand rather than by shouting.
Hear anything?
With today's problems with speaking and inability to determine the victor
Is there
behavior
volume?
as I raise your hand.
What?
Maybe it is the other.
No, well, I just tried though, but nothing comes on.
Somebody on the back of the line there, can you just tell moderators, there is training involved, skills involved, reading involved. You wouldn't know that by seeing me in action, but there is some learning to be done. So it would be wonderful if some of you
Yeah, I know, I see,
consider
but that's
serving
few second delay, so let's see what happens now. Because I just switched to the other one to
School board
check
member
it. I
Ed
think it will be
Robinson,
fine.
with 346 votes, was elected to the 3-year term. The warrant
Yeah, this will
articles
change in a
all
second.
passed except for the
Okay,
last
now,
one, which
now
was
it's good. Yep.
the following. I'm going to read it. They all passed the budget and the rest of them, but Article 8, the last one, was defeated. To instruct the Madison School District to declare the building known as the Madison Corner Schoolhouse as surplus and follow through with the removal of the building from the Madison School District property, either through demolition or sale to include lead abatement from the area. And the town voted against that, perhaps instructing the school board that we're not sure what we want to do with it, at least we don't want to be demolished. Leave today, look at the little schoolhouse, and decide what you'd like to see happen to it, because a lot of discussion is going on. So in any case, no decision. The recommended article was on the town's budget, on the town warrant, under selectmen, Joy Gray received 297 votes and was elected for a 3-year term as selectman. She will take office at the next, following this meeting. And so Mike Morrow, who is current chair of the selectmen, continues to serve in that role, and will be finishing his term after today. And I'd like you all to join me. I've enjoyed working with Mike. Very nice job, very well informed. Please join me in a round of applause. Town clerk and tax collector Mike Brooks won there with 169 votes. Town moderator, I was on the ballot, and I received 411 votes. In that, Michael Brooks got 1. Bill Ward got 2, and really is right on my heels. Supervisor checklist, Emily Shepard won with 403 votes. Emily, where are you? There you are. Is today your birthday? Yeah. How many years? No, okay. Well, you want to speak? How many years have you served in this role? And that you're too young to have served that many years. Anyway, planning board members, Paul Littlefield and Mark Olson, both were elected to those positions with 352 and 334 votes respectively. Trustee of the library, Karen Ward and Liz Smith, with both were elected with 381 and 351 votes. Advisory Budget Committee member Josh Jackford was elected for 3 years with 290 votes. Trustee of the trust funds, Kathleen Moore, with 364 votes, was elected. And there were 2 other articles. The zoning change was approved, 293 to 114, and the increase in the number of selectmen from 3 to 5 members passed with a vote of 270 yes to 172 no, and that will take effect at next year's Tuesday election. There will be 5 positions open, and there'll be 3 positions voted on next year, and there will be a total of 5 positions on the board the next time. No. So next year's town meeting will still have 3 select members, board members. 2 3-year seats and 1 1-year seat will be elected next year on the Tuesday election, but we'll have 1 more year, not till the end of the town meeting, that new elected officials take positions. Next year's town meeting, there'll be 3 selectmen sitting up here, and 5 will take over following the meeting. So that are the results of the election. I'm going to ask you to open up your books, assuming you've all picked up a book. I'm going to ask you to open up to page 1 and join me in remembering some folks who contributed to our town. I'll let you read the descriptions of their service to our country, as well as to our community. Ken Hughes and John Sherwood, all people who remember who contributed to our community, devoted many, many hours serving our community. I'm just going to mention Henry Clark as well. His passing more recent, that was in the book next year. But Henry added his front row seat, civility, wisdom, and just many, many hours of service to our community. All four of them are people that I will personally miss. Please join me in a moment of thank you. They will be difficult people to replace, and I hope some of you, particularly those of you on the younger edge of 90 compared to the rest of the will think about your ability to serve our community going forward. These are difficult people to replace. They served us for a long time, very, very well. You turn the page, some additional markers. James C. Jones and the President William Jones, in many, many years of serving us and the whole Home Committee. Hilda Roach, the Planning Board for many years. Mark McKenna on the Conservation Commission and chairing that for much of the time. Josh Shackford for his many years of service as a selectman. Mark Hotman for years on the zoning board of appeals, and I thank them all very much. And I just want to every once in a while remember Jim. This room is named in his honor. James Boyd was a state trooper who died heroic, very heroic. Any person I knew as a state trooper in the line of duty, and he was a wonderful person. Served our community, contributed to these meetings. Great guy. And many of us
Well, what do you want me to do?
So, a round of applause for the people in appreciation.
I don't think so.
I'm getting nostalgic. If you would turn to the yellow pages in your book, that's the town warrant that we are considering here today. The first three articles were addressed on Tuesday at the vote, and we will begin the voting today with Article 4. I would mention to all of you that PTO is in the back of the room raising money for a playground by selling really good stuff. I'm hoping that some very talkative person will stand up at the microphone and get going. I'll be able to eat some of my pumpkin bar, and there's really good stuff here. So please utilize the service from the group in the back for a very good cause. Before we start, I'll remind you that on page 9, I believe, is in your book, are the rules for the operation of this meeting. Moderator's rules. They are flawless, they're perfect, they've been in place for decades. But you have the authority to overrule me on anything. You simply go to the microphone and say, point of order, Mr. Moderator. I want to overrule you and do something different from how you do it. And then we'll have a vote. But we'll have a vote on whether to overrule the moderator and do it the way you want to. So while I get to make up rules and stand here and lead the meeting, you get to overrule me anytime you want. You are in charge here, not look like I'm hurting. But you can overrule me anytime you want, and that is the most important thing to remember. Final thing, I'm sorry, before we go barreling into the articles. Last year, there were a handful of votes to ban reconsideration of an article. So in other words, you do Article 5, and at the end of Article 5, it's voted up and down, and then someone stands up and says, I want to eliminate any chance of this being reconsidered at the end of the meeting and change the result of the being changed. Other towns have that vote after every single warrant article. Finish the warrant article and then have a whole nother vote to say, we won't change our minds and reconsider it at the end of the meeting. And that's because in some towns, there's a history that at the end of the meeting, after a whole bunch of people have left, that the handful of people who remain change what the rest of the town voted on earlier in the meeting. And it sticks. And so there is this authority for the town to vote to ban reconsideration. I don't want you to do that. I don't want to waste our time here after every single article going through the process of banning reconsideration. Once we vote on it, it's done. If at the end of the meeting, one of you stands up and says, I move that we reconsider some article from the beginning of the meeting, I'm going to tell you to sit down and be quiet. Now, you can overrule me, but just don't do that. We should trust one another enough to know nobody's going to pull that kind of nonsense. We shouldn't have to go through this ridiculous process of banning reconsideration. Everybody understand what I'm saying? We're here all on the same side. So, okay, good. Article 4, we're ready to get to work. This stuff a lot of time. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,767,742 for general government. This article does not include appropriations containing special or individual articles addressed separately. Do I have a motion and a second from our selectmen? So Selectman Ruda and Selectman Price. Thank you very much. And we do permit the makers of the motion to speak first if they want, but I think I'd rather hear from Jesse Jackson. So you would like to speak first.
Well, I wanted to just get quite
A little closer to the microphone. That's all.
I studied this pretty extensively, and I know a lot of the backstory of it, but it's a done deal. This is where it's going to go, because this group stamped it, this group made up the numbers, so very little is going to change here today. Now, down the road, you can only hope.
Thank you. Anyone is available to speak, and thank you, both our, oh, I didn't introduce everything. Real quick before we go, Chairman Fernandez, will you introduce your budget committee, advisory budget?
I'm Tino Fernandez, the chair this year of the advisory budget committee. Next to me is Joe Dane.
Speak into that microphone.
Next to me is Joe Dane, and next to me is our vice chair, Sharon Schilling, Doug McAllister, our alternate, Joy Gray, and our school committee representative, Sharon D. Martino, and Sarah, I'm sorry. And then what is missing is our selectman thing. Yep. Well, Ned Robertson is missing, he's not here today, but our selectman representative is John Arruda.
Thank you. And Chairman Morrow, could you introduce the crowd to my right?
Yes, good morning. Is this on? Okay. We have Michael Brooks, John Arruda, myself, Price, and Shackley. Mayor.
Thank you. Very good. Ms. Schilling, would you like to speak to Article 4?
Thank you. I just wanted to remind the folks in the audience that I believe after the last town hall meeting, there was a caveat put in place that should a motion come from the floor in order to amend this budget, well, the selectmen required that there be a specific line item that you have to take that money from. So last year we voted as a town to reduce the town budget, this piece of the budget, the operations budget, by $70,000 plus dollars. This year, if you'd like to do that, you need to specify where it's coming from.
And that's not correct. Sorry, and all well intended. So for decades, selectmen have preferred that when people people stand and say, I'd like to cut the budget by $100,000. Henry Clark was a pretty traditional motion. He would stand up and say, I move that we reduce the budget by $100,000. And it would be seconded. And he would usually, I think maybe always lose. But he would not identify the particular line item that would be modified to save that $100,000. And his argument was that the selectmen are better suited to decide where that reduction should come from, but we should simply save some money and reduce the budget by $100,000. There is no obligation for someone making a motion to indicate if they so chose to reduce the budget by a dollar figure, where that savings should come from. The selectmen would really appreciate what you did. It provides them with guidance and helps them understand what your priorities are and what you would like to see the savings come from, what might be eliminated by that savings. But it's not your obligation to do so. So you could get up and say, I don't think it should be 1.776 million, I think it should be 1.7 million, and you can sit down and you're done. That motion is on the floor, it's seconded, and we would consider it. If you did get up and say, I think the money should come out of this particular line item, that would be very helpful to the selectmen, but they don't have to pay any attention to it anyway. When you make a motion to reduce the budget amount of money, it comes from the bottom line. The selectmen retain the authority to use that money as they see fit within the categories that are in this particular article. In this case, it's the article on general government. If you wish to make a motion to modify the dollar amount, you're not obligated to indicate the reason for it. Number two, it would be very helpful to selectmen if you did indicate where you'd like to see the change come from. And number three, even if you do that and it passes, they're not obligated to follow your instructions. So that's the information you need to know. I hope that's not confusing for you, but there has been, as you just heard, thank you. Other discussion or comments, questions, or amendments, whatever type, to Article 4. Then, yeah, I need to make a motion that we hold the microphone a little closer. We can make a motion that we reduce the total line item by 3747. Can you give me what the new number would be? The new total would be $1,772,995. 1,772,995. Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Yes. Yes, that money's coming from the line every year. That line is dictated by the checking. That's after putting the budget together. So that reduced the cost for our public television service by receiving that revenue, and that's the recommendation. That is the motion on the floor to reduce that amount. So we'll have a first vote as to whether or not to approve the amendment. If there's discussion on the amendment, yes, sir.
That money does not come from the town. It comes from the subscribers to Spectrum. That money that is not spent is put in expendable trust because the equipment that they actually use is very expensive. Someday we're going to have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to replace it. So year after year, this number is in the budget, and then it goes into the expendable trust. I would support that we do not have that amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion? Again, just so I'm clear, you're not suggesting, Selectman Price, that we reduce reduce the money being put into the expendable trust fund. You're simply saying it's going to come from Spectrum rather than from taxpayers.
Yes, year after year, that money comes from the franchisees that is the job of the state, and the franchise is based on the check review. We did not have that check when this budget was written. We now have that check. The dollar figure is not intended to be the dollar figure that the check is on.
Got it.
Not having to take money.
Okay. Can everyone hear that microphone? No, some people aren't. So if you can crank him up a little bit, that would be great. But be quiet and we'll get to you again in a minute. So we are, I think, ready to consider the amendment to reduce the bottom line of Article 4 to $1,772,995, reducing it from the number that's in your book. Did you wish to speak? And please come to the microphone so that people can hear.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, Carol Kramer. I would wish to reduce the amount that's going to the recreation program.
Then I'm going to ask you to stand there for another minute and not move, because we take one amendment at a time. Okay. And so stay right there, because we'll get this resolved very quickly. So before we address Ms. Kramer's thoughts, we will vote on the amendment to reduce it from 767,772,995. All those in favor of the amendment proposed by Mr. Price, please raise your hand with your little ticket. Thank you. All opposed, please raise your hand. The ayes have it, and the new number that's on the floor is now 1,772,995, and now we can consider additional amendments to the number that's there, as many as you'd like. Ms. Kramer.
Thank you. I wish to reduce the amount for the Recreation Department from $66,000. I'm waiting.
So if you'd like to make a motion, I do need a number. I
move that we reduce the amount of the recreation program to $40,000.
To $40,000, so reducing it by $26,000. Okay. Ms. Shackford, if you would do the computation for me on that, I'll ask you for it in a minute. Is there a second to that motion so we can discuss it? So I have a second. Sir, your name? Thank you. And so, Ms. Kramer, would you like to speak to your rationale for that reduction?
Yes, sir. The amount that is $66,000 is double what they had last year. I have searched through and I would appreciate if anybody could tell me where there is a budget.
Would you like to hear from Mr. Price?
Okay, well, what I'm saying is I couldn't find a budget, and it's doubled. The amount doubled. And also does this include the salary of or is that coming later?
Why don't we have Mr. Price do the explanation for this,
Thank you.
and then we can hear from others as well. Yes, sir.
So the actual budget is double. The double that you're seeing is a movement of last year's passing of the warrant article for the salary of the director moving into the line item as opposed to its own warrant article. So it is the same amount of money as last year. It's just not in the warrant article and in the operating budget. It's in one place.
Selectman Price, could you point us to the minutes from last year in pages 20-something or other and help us remember which article it was last year that contained that salary? I have it memorized.
It's on page 30 of the minutes.
Yeah, Article 22, which is on page 30, or begins on page 30 and goes on for a ways.
Last year, we wrote a warrant article to ask for a full-time director at a salary of $55,000. And during time, that article was reduced for a part-time director to $30,000. When that article passed as amended, we moved that $30,000 into the regular budget.
So if I were to look at page 150, the yellow page that shows rec program, 3 programs from the bottom, there on the top of the page, it goes from 31,000 to 66, but in fact, in terms of what's allocated, but in fact, 30 additional thousand was voted elsewhere in the warrant last year, and so in fact 61,000 in total was the number from last year. Does that sound right?
It does sound right. The original number from last year was $38,000. After that $70,000 reduction, we opted to recommend to the selectmen at the time that we remove 7 of that $70,000 from the rec line to help them allocate money that was needed.
So it doesn't mean that you can still pursue the amendment that you have, but that helps clarify why the number is significantly larger.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. However, I will say that there is no budget listed in this book that states how the money was used. So now we understand, and I've looked for it. It's in the. I read the annual report, but I would really appreciate knowing exactly how much of that money was used for salary and how much of that money was used elsewhere. And there were mentions in the annual report that there were very generous donors.
There are very generous donors.
Has to be
We haven't spent the cost on it and do our best to use those donations.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
Refer to page 13 of the summary. It's not in the book, it's the pamphlet that was over on the table. It shows you how much was spent on each item, and if you look at the wages line, if I can find it. So the director's salary was spent from the warrant article, which is why you won't see it on that line. I believe it is in the So after last year's town meeting, that money was spent, and it was $13,705, and that's because it wasn't a full year's. Nothing went into effect until after April, so it's prorated for salary.
That was the salary, 13?
Yes.
And what amount was spent then on non-salary?
Yeah, if you want to take, it's all right here in the book, everything's laid out. We spent
Okay.
everything from advertising, background checks for volunteer, equipment, fees and dues to the local rec clubs, field trips for our summer camp kids, we have a supplies line, which serves every other department in this town, technology, where we have our own website and transportation.
Okay, that's very helpful. I wish it had been put out simultaneously with this to be studied in advance. So now that I know, I'd still like to have a vote and one other thing before I be quiet is I would recommend to the Recreation Department that since this town is Madison/Silver Lake, we surround a lake, and there is no training for teaching swimming lessons to the youth of the town. To me, that would be the primary purpose of the Recreation Department. I would hate to see a headline, "Child drowns in Silver Lake because they never had swim lessons."
So to speak to that, and but I'm going to feature that as
I'll-
well.
Didn't go back and forth, but go ahead, please.
I need a chance to defend this budget because it is heavily my doing. There will be swimming lessons offered at summer camp this year to all of our summer camp attendees. I believe we decided on Wednesday or somehow like that, Mr. Daly. But we are certifying an instructor out of this budget we'll push $40,000, with $30,000 going to wages. We will do none of that. Plain and simple. There's no more to say other than none of it will happen. We'll be paying somebody to do that.
Mr. Moderator, if I could ask you,
I'm sorry?
if I could add some information.
Yes.
So last year, $38,000 was approved as the standard budget, and
$30,000 for the rec director. As Adam mentioned, at the select board meeting, when the town voted to reduce the budget by $72,000, the recreation department, as Adam mentioned, gave $7,000 back, so we did have an operating budget of $31,000. So this is actually $2,000 lower than the $38,000 that was approved last year. And we, I think summer camp alone generated, I think $21,000 in revenue, and we are moving to be self-sustaining. We are moving to have less of the burden on the taxpayer and more contributions by the participants. We have added a fee to youth sports programs for participants, and that's the direction we are moving in. We do have very generous donors, which is why we didn't expend the full budget, but it was the first big year, I'd say. I mean, this is our second year in operation. We were able to roll out a ton of programs this year. But the goal is we can't rely on donations, but we are moving to be less of a burden to the taxpayer and more funded by the participants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But we will proceed with the vote unless you wish to withdraw it, but we will proceed with the vote.
Due to the explanations given to me, I wish to withdraw my motion.
Okay, and the second, Mr. Dempster, would you like to withdraw your second? Yes. Okay, so we are done with you.
Thank you.
Right now.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. One more thought, though. If you could make these swimming lessons available to not only kids in swimming camp, but in camp, and also maybe at a price, charge non-resident to have their children attend. I really am anxious to see swimming lessons. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator?
Thank you. Yes, briefly.
We did try to add swim lessons last year for community. It didn't come to fruition. So we are doing this for this year to make sure that it works well, and then hopefully next year we can do exactly that.
Very good. Thank you. Yes.
Mike Vayu, Mr. Moderator, just a point of question. Are you going to address the entire article, each and every one, or are you going to do line item within each article? Because in the past you did line item within each article.
We've walked through it, and I could certainly read through it.
I'm not asking you to.
Okay.
Just
people seem so prepared this year that I didn't think it was necessary. I'm assuming each of you are taking responsibility to look at each of those line items and making that determination if you want to ask a question or make an amendment as you look at those line items.
Thank you.
But thank you. It is a change. Yes.
Nicole Nordland, good morning. I have a few questions before voting on this budget. Can anybody provide the balance of the $80,000 that we agreed to pay to attorneys last year?
What do you mean by that?
We created an account with $80,000 in it, and I want to know the balance.
Okay, they'll work on that once you ask further questions as they compute that.
Does every town department that takes in donations have a 501(c) where we can see the donations, or is it C3 or 3C?
C3.
Yeah. Does everyone have that so we can see the donations that come in and as part of the budget? Like collected in donations for rec, collected in donations for fire, collecting donations for police, that kind of thing? And should they be, so that it's transparent?
I think good question. How many 501c3s do we have? Are we, how many different categories do we fall into? Is that a separate any a 501c3? It is not. So just to be clear, all the rest of the funds, donations that come in, would be shown in the town accounting system and would make it through the budget process that we see here. It is only the fire department that has a separate 501c3. Thank you.
And is it advantageous to get more money donated to have that so people can get off? And yeah, I mean, it's just an idea. I just curious where all the money goes that it's accounted for, that people are so generous with. I have a question for the budget committee. I see that you recommended the budget this year. I was wondering if that vote still stands. I feel the same, given that a few weeks have passed and things are light. If you don't mind me asking, if you can give me thumbs up or thumbs down on this budget. I'm just saying individually. Yes.
We're not going to quiz.
Okay, I'm just curious.
But yeah, they should feel all free to speak up as individuals if they have any questions or challenges.
You don't have to speak. If you want to speak, that you still approve the budget.
I was unable to attend the advisory budget committee meeting vote due to a health issue, but had I been at that meeting, I would not have necessarily voted for the budget due to some ongoing concerns that I have regarding some of the things that Norman brought up. There's a real transparent accounting of what is the money being spent on, what is the requirement for the money, how is the budget actually being done, and also then where those expenditures are being used. I think that the selectmen and the department heads have done probably as good a job as they possibly can at this particular moment. I just think personally over the next couple of years, one of the things that should probably be brought into play is a little bit more of a specific accounting, specific numbers, a little bit more specificity, I guess, to the department budgets that we get, so that we can assist, work with, and help the town really conserve whatever money it is and use it as best as possible.
Thank you.
Do we have?
Keep in mind that we have a 2-minute limit, as noted in there. You've not used it. You're
Okay.
asking questions. Other people are taking that time.
Okay.
But let's pick up the pace. We're on Article 4, and I don't believe the PTO is prepared to serve dinner tonight.
Okay.
So,
Do we have that figure?
Just real quick, if you look at page 62 on the treasurer's report, that will show you donations to the rec department.
Okay, thank you.
As far as the warrant article goes, we spent around $7,000.
7,000. Okay, and Mr. Epstein brought up, I saw on video, and I brought it up, I think almost every year at this meeting, the separation of the budget into 3 departments, and I was assured, I believe at this body, that it means you can still move money throughout, and it was, Mr. George has said at the last meeting that is not true, and I would like you to consider putting it all back together and I've said it every year, but I think it's important to have more flexibility in the budget than just 3 line items, which are only interchangeable. I did watch that video. I thank you for your clarification. I've asked for it every year. I've always kind of not judged it. And with that, I will say, I would like to make a motion to reduce that number 3 or 4 that we're on by $22,785.
22,000, I'm sorry, please say the number again.
$22,785.
$785. Ms. Shackford is computing away. Do I have a second for that, or would you like to speak to it first? Do I have a second? Yes, sir. Your name? Carl Norland. Very good decision, Mr. Norland. Would you like to speak to?
I just see a lot of jumps. I'm not going to ask questions about the jumps. I feel like it can be reined in where lines were either overspent or the money may not be needed, or I see that there's a possibility, I really don't need the clarification, that more money is going to, no offense, to lawyers. And and maybe in the zoning lawyer or whatever. And I don't think that we need to spend more money on legal fees. Most of it is, I see, in several lines, could be construed as for lawyers. So I would like to cut that out and at least make a modest reduction of $22,785.
Thank you. A motion is seconded to amend the number from what is now 1772995 to a lower number by 22,785. And what would that number be, Ms. Shackford? Sorry, putting the pressure on.
I have it.
You have it?
Mm-hmm. I think.
Well, and you have the new number, and now that. Okay, go ahead.
I believe it's 1750210.
1750210. That looks about right. I think that's probably correct, doing it in my head. I was a math teacher at Kennett, and you have to decide whether you think that's right. So that is the article, that is the motion on the floor, that amendment. Does anybody wish to speak to that amendment beyond Ms. Nordland's comments? Please.
If you look at the original numbers, we were already below last year's budget, so there were increases in line items, but decreases in total budget.
Thank you.
It was the decreases in line items that I was looking at, because I really feel in these times that we're all living in, it needs to be as constrained as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will vote on the amendment, not on the final article, but on the amendment to reduce the number that's currently on the floor of $1,772,995 and reduce it to $1,750,210. All those in favor of that reduction, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. I believe the nays have it, and I declare it a vote, and the motion, the amendment is defeated. Note that if you ever want to challenge my judgment on a vote count, just say point of order. I'd like to see a division of the House, and we can do it in another way, more precisely. Have people stand and count. But that, I declare that amendment to be defeated. And we're back to 1772995. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Donna Vayu, Lead Mine Road. My question is under the title insurance. And not wanting to disappoint anybody, I will ask my annual question. Does the town carry employee unemployment insurance? No. Has the town been obligated to make any payments representing such?
You can see on that line, I believe, from this packet here, you'll see that I believe we started at $5,000 and we ended with $5,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Linda Hager, 35 Pebblebrook Road. And I have a question about swim lessons and the rec department. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask it.
Short questions and short answers would be great.
All right. So I've lived in town for 40 years. My kids are in their 30s. We didn't used to have a rec department, but all of our children learned how to swim at the lake. I'm not sure where the money came from. It was 1 month, 4 weeks of swim lessons. There was a trained person doing it 5 days a week from 9 to 12. So I just don't know why that stopped.
Okay, thank you. Anybody know the history there? Mr. Lack of instructor is the reason why it has lapsed. But they're putting it together. We're going to have an instructor this year.
Okay, can I ask?
Go ahead.
If we did find an instructor, is there any way we can take the burden off of the rec department for that? I think everyone would agree that all children in our town need to learn to swim.
Thank you. And please note the reference earlier to fees now being charged for some of that, and that is defraying the cost for the taxpayer, if not completely covering it. If there's no final question or comment on Article 4, we will in fact vote on Article 4. So far we've just voted on amendments. We are now voting on Article 4 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,772,995 for general government. If there are no other questions, we will vote. All in favor of that sum, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. The ayes have it, and I declare it a vote. Okay, Article 5. And just in reference to Ms. Nordland's comments, a few years ago, Articles 4, 5, and 6 would have all been part of the overall budget and would all have been voted on at once, and there would be a single bottom line total for Articles 4, 5, and 6, and that gives the selectmen the flexibility to move money around among that entire budget, the sum of Articles 4, 5, and 6. The selectmen, by dividing it up into these three pieces, are giving you more power. They're giving you, the townspeople, the power to decide for each of these three big categories how much you'd like to spend in each of those categories, and they're not allowed to move the money from Article 6 to Article 5 or whatever, and they reduce their own power. That's something that selectmen don't normally do. So this is pretty exciting to me that they agreed to do that, but it is an interesting question as to whether flexibility, as Ms. Nordland said, was a better idea, or whether this party to you folks to divide it up like this is the better idea. It's an interesting question to be decided not today. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $964,701 for public works. Do I have a motion and second from the selectmen? Yes, Price and Morrow. Is there any discussion, comments, or amendments to Article 5? Yes, sir.
Jesse Shackford again. As I stated earlier, nothing's really going to change here, actually. And I don't have any problem with the number necessarily. I'm pretty familiar with this kind of project overall. But I question, what did our highway department do from the 1st of November until today other than plow a few small scuds of snow? The trucks all laid in the barn, all hooked with plows and wings and loaded with sand. The excavator, the loader, the grader, everything set outside. I go by often. Nothing was moving. How much can you do in 16 weeks inside a garage? The stories must have got old. I mean, they had to be well-worn stories. This is ridiculous. The money, the numbers, I can't fight those numbers, but I would like to get some production. There's trees to be cut. We didn't have hardly any frost this winter. They could have been ditching half the time, but we don't want to go to the trouble of taking the plow and the wing off and the spreader body. You get a Monday morning weather report. No storms this week. Wouldn't that be a good time to get something done? This is ridiculous. We have got to have some oversight. We have got to have more professionalism, and we have got to get these guys working. This is not a retirement home.
Thank you.
This is ridiculous.
Thank you. Yes.
Donna again. I need some help understanding this. Adam, I believe you just said you were under last year's budget.
Please direct your questions to me.
Oh,
that's
I understand. Adam just said this budget is under last year's
I'm trying
budget?
to keep it all warm and fuzzy, and it's getting a little bit harder here. So
Is that correct?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Is this year's, this proposal is under last year's budget?
It is. Roughly $4,000.
Okay. So the DRA approved the over expenditure of 441,000. Was that part of that matrix? Okay. So would that have come out of the unassigned funds? Well, if you look on the last page, it says...
The last page of what?
The last page of the warrant article, it says, Selectmen used 0 of unassigned funds. Help me understand.
Please.
Sorry, George.
No. Good question. So each year, when we ask the Department of Revenue Administration to set the tax rate for the town, they actually do the computation. One of the things the selectmen decide is out of unexpended funds, surpluses that are there, how much do we want to reduce that pad that we have and use it to reduce taxes. They didn't do that at all, but during the course of the year, when the roads washed out, then a separate request was made to be allowed to use some of those funds to fix the roads.
So why does it say 0? Am I not getting this?
Because this particular thing just references the setting of the tax rate at the beginning of the year. Excuse me, at the end of the year, yes.
I'll have to go home and study this. I guess I don't understand.
I'm sorry if I wasn't helpful. Again, there are two separate uses for the surplus. One is to reduce taxes, and one is to pay for an emergency situation. And this references the effort to reduce taxes. None of it was used to reduce taxes, but $400,000 was used to fix the roads because of the emergency. I failed once again. That's why I no longer teach algebra at Kennett. Poor little kids couldn't figure out what I was talking about. Yes?
In response to what does the highway department do during the year, every other Tuesday at the select board meeting, the highway department gives an accounting of what was done during those 2 weeks. So if you want to tune in and watch it, you want to come to meetings, but you can see exactly what was done during the time when they're not.
Thank you. We are ready to consider Article 5, to raise and appropriate the sum of $964,701 for Public Works. Seeing no further discussion, we will vote. All those in favor of Article 5, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Article 5 passes. Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $668,645 for public safety. I have motion and a second from the selectmen. I do, Aruda and Price. Is there any discussion or question or amendment associated with Article 6?
Just a piece of information. Do we have enough members, qualified members on the fire department to empty the barn? Do we have enough members that can get into a vehicle and safely go and attend to an emergency? I don't see much activity there at all, so I'm not sure just what the membership is.
Thank you. Do we have a response from our fire chief or anyone else?
That's a difficult question to answer, not knowing what the emergency is. So if you could come up with an emergency that nobody has enough people for. But we do have qualified people for most of our ordinary responses are good. We've gained 3 new emergency medical technicians this year through training provided by the town. firefighters in the last 2 years have completed firefighter 1, and 2 of those have gone on to complete firefighter 2 certifications. So we're gaining. We are always looking for new members. The younger the better, of course. If you'd like to volunteer and join the department, I'd be happy to talk to you and provide an application.
Thank you, and thanks to all of you who serve in the fire department and rescue. Further questions on Article 6? Yes.
Reading the non-public minutes, I understand there's been a Oh, Donna Vayu.
Thank you.
Reading the non-public minutes, I understand there's been a substantial Board of Selectmen's approval for the police budget. And that was after this budget was approved by the Budget Committee and the Selectmen. And I'm just wondering, where might that money be found?
I don't understand the question.
Okay. The Selectmen approved a request within the police department to extend health insurance for an employee after this budget was approved by the Selectmen and the Budget Committee. So I don't think those monies are in this budget. They are? Where?
Which is under Article 4?
How did you approve it if...
I'm sorry. So we're considering the bottom line budgets in each of these 3 categories.
Right.
We are the legislature for the town of Madison, and we vote a dollar amount for the expenditure in these categories and these purposes. Very specific allocations for a given employee or for the purchase of a particular insurance policy, those are executive functions that are under the authority of the selectmen. If you want to question the expenditures,
yeah. Well, yeah. How much was that approval?
Well, that's for a specific employee. I think the issue at hand that's appropriate for the legislature is how much is being spent on medical insurance. And they have to decide whether they have an adequate amount to cover the medical insurance benefits that are being approved. So just want to be a little bit careful about that.
I guess, George, my concern is that this approval was voted on after the budget was approved by both of these entities.
If it was an approval for a particular benefit for a particular employee, that's not the business of this town. They have to decide if the budget is adequate to cover that cost. If they believe it is, and they just said they did, that's not our job to decide how they manage that budget during the course of the year and the particular benefits they award to particular individuals. You can question the overall plan of benefits, that's fine, and how generous those benefits are and so on, but not particular employee stuff.
So can we talk about precedent? Does this set precedent?
What's the question? What are you trying to get at? They have adequate money in order to fund their insurance, they believe. Do you have a question about whether the insurance is an appropriate award of insurance for an employee?
What was the question?
We're not going to do specific employee benefits. That's not the purpose of the legislative body. And it gets us into all sorts of problems with regard to the privacy of individuals and their right to have their insurance coverages personal and so on. What we do have the authority to do is to question the expenditure of money. Was money being expended in a way that you believe was inappropriate? Those would be reasonable things to question.
Okay, so I guess my question is, does the police budget cover this extension of health insurance voted on? Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, point of order.
Yes.
You must allow only voters of the town to speak at this meeting.
Good question. So it's been the policy of this moderator to allow as a default non-residents to speak, and I have offered to the town the opportunity to say they don't want that, and on occasion they have so voted. In other words, somebody says, point of order, Mr. Moderator, as you did, I'd like to limit speakers to just town voters. The trick to that, of course, is there are really two categories of non-voters. There are non-voters who are non-voters, and there are non-voters who are employees of the town and are department heads or police chiefs or whatever. And so I start with a default that yes, we're willing to listen to them, but you have every right to say, Mr. Moderator, I move that I'd like to limit speakers to those who are town voters. Would you like to do that?
No.
Thank you. Proceed. And let us know who you are and where you live. And
Bob King, Tamworth. The police chief also. There's been no change to the police department budget since it was approved by the budget committee and the selectmen and placed on the warrant.
Thank you. Our police chief is publicly announced he's retiring this summer sometime. I've worked with a number of police chiefs, and I want to thank Chief King myself, and I'd like you to join me in this opportunity to thank him with a little bit of a round of applause. We haven't always hit it out of the park with our police chiefs, and we have a very fine one today. Other questions with regard to Article 6? Okay, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $668,645 for public safety, please raise your hand if you're in favor of that article. Thank you. Those opposed? Article passes. Again, challenge me if you think I'm wrong about that. Article 7, see if town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $250,000 for paving and road improvements of town roads, including but not limited to Mooney Hill Road, Allard Hill Road, and East Madison Road. This will be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 3276 and will not lapse until the funds have been exhausted with the completion of the project or by December 31st, 2029, whichever is sooner. Hopefully they'll spend it faster than that. Do I have a motion and a second from the selectmen? I do. Aruda and Price. Do I have any comments or questions with regard to Article 7 and $250,000? Yes. Yeah, please get to that microphone. The sooner you head to the microphone, the sooner I'll be home with my feet up this afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Dave Evans. I live on Modoc Hill Road, and I wonder if Modoc Hill Road flood damage is going to be covered out of this.
Well, you see Article 9 has reference to Modoc Hill Road specifically, and so
that's where it is.
So is Article 7 going to be utilized for Modoc Hill? It will not, but when Article 9 comes, you can demand whatever you want, okay?
Thank you, I will.
Okay, thank you. Get right up to that microphone, though. Further discussion with regard to Article 7? Seeing none, we will vote on whether to expend $250,000 on those roads. Please raise your hand if the answer is yes. Thank you. Raise your hand if the answer is no. The yeas have it, and the article passes. Sorry. This is the correct name to the expendable trust fund, Linda? She's going to check. See if the town will vote to authorize the selectmen to enter into a 5-year lease agreement in the amount of $225,000 for the purpose of leasing a new solid waste truck and to raise and appropriate the sum of $90,000 for the first year's payment for that purpose, with $40,000 to come from the trade-in of the solid waste truck and $50,000 from the Transfer Station Capital Improvement Expendable Trust Fund. This lease agreement contains an escape clause. Second, motion and second. Thank you, and this is the correct name. Okay. If you look down on Article 12, if you just join me for a moment, you see in Article 12 reference to the Transfer Station Capital Projects Expendable Trust Fund. That's actually the correct name of the trust fund, the one in Article 12, not the one in Article 8. But we're not going to amend it or anything else. We're going to see if our town clerk can just fix the minutes so that that is put in correctly. They are the same trust fund. That's the important thing for you to know. There's a little bit of a misprint there, not worth lots of amendments and so on. So with that, yes, sir.
Yes, I had the opportunity to view Mr. Dam's appraisal of this, and the Budget Committee all condoned this purchase. I refigured that a little bit using some common sense and industry standards. And given the mileage, that truck has got probably 300,000 miles left on it. You wouldn't find a local hauler here spending $250,000 to buy a truck to use 2.5 days a week and have a full-time driver and pay him a salary. It doesn't make sense. They said there was $60,000 spent on that truck. Well, $60,000 would overhaul the truck. It would rebuild it. Good for another 5-10 years. If you go to the numbers of what it actually costs for upkeep, nobody would keep a truck that costs $60,000 a year in maintenance. That's a fallacy. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. So using standards that business would use, this truck conceivably with maybe $70,000 total for 13 years would still be a viable piece of equipment. We went into this to save money, not to throw it away. It would be like buying a thoroughbred for Sunday afternoon pony rides. It's
Thank you. Thank you. Before I ask for any comments on that, I believe I failed to request the motion and second for this particular article, Morrow and Price. Thank you. We have a motion and second, so it's officially on the floor. Thank you, Attorney Mayor. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Edwin. I actually did a very comprehensive cost analysis. I looked at cost of repairs and the existing Kenworth close to $600,000. Required a lot of repairs, and I believe and these additional expensive repairs this year check the truck. There's some issues with the truck right now, just wearing out. I did a market survey that looked across what these trucks cost, and it came up with $275,000. The town went out, we did market research. They found a vehicle for they found $225,000. So it's a 2023 leftover. It's configured for the town, so it came in cheaper. I compared the cost of our North County disposal service. It was $540 a load plus mileage and other expenses. I calculated it's actually over $100 per load cheaper than and the nice thing with this new vehicle that the town was getting a very good deal on, in my opinion, it comes with a 7-year warranty. You know, it covers the powertrain, all the expensive stuff that's wearing out on the existing vehicle. So the cost is actually less than what we want.
Thank you. Further comments? Yes?
I just have a question. So it looks like for this current year, there would be no money expended from the budget or anything, or even from a warrant article, because $40,000 would come from the trade-in and $50,000 from an existing expendable trust fund. Is that correct? Okay. And then on the warrant, there's $0 listed on the warrant summary. But that leaves $135,000 still needed to pay for the truck. So is that built into the budget for next year? How does that work?
So that would,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Go where?
That would, payment would go into the notes due line next year.
Notes due as a lease. Thank you. Yes, additional question? Ms. Gray? Did you have additional
Yeah,
question?
I'm sorry, how much a year is that?
The 5-year lease at $31,906.22 a year.
$32,000 a year, roughly. Other comments or questions with regard to Article 8? The pumpkin bar is outstanding. I can't believe you're just sitting there and not all eating the pumpkin bar. They are really good back there. Yes, sir. Mr. Aruda.
As most of you know, can you hear me? As most of you know, I work at the transfer station. The reliability of that truck is essential to moving our rubbish. And we probably move 40 tons a week. If that truck goes down, which it has, rubbish doesn't stop coming. It keeps coming and coming and coming. So we need a reliable truck, and warranty service, and this vehicle will last us many years into the future. I work very closely with Dave, who's going to have to work on this. And we have outfitted that transfer station with one of the better transfer stations in the North Country. It is neat, it is clean, it is packaged, it is ready to roll every single Monday night. And by the way, Dave does other work besides that work.
Thank you. And thanks to the transfer station folks. It is a lot better than it was in the distant past. Yes.
Sharon Schilling, also, Mr. Moderator, would this vehicle be available then to the rest of the town to use when it is not being used for transfer station duties? No. Not at all.
Because it's not appropriate for other purposes, or it's, I'm sorry. Go ahead, somebody.
Sorry to jump in here, but they would use it for anything that they could use it for. The current truck was used to move those giant concrete blocks that we use to build the culvert headers on Colby Hill Road. If they can safely and suitably use that truck for a purpose that supports the efforts of the DPW or any other department, I'm sure they'll do that.
Thank you. Yes.
No, I wanted to clarify that based on, I don't doubt the need for it at all, or I have complete faith in the persons who researched it and all of that. My question was I just wanted to clarify where we will see that in the budget next year.
Yeah, notes due, yes. $32,000 a year approximately for the next few years. Is there any further discussion on Article 8? Yes, sir.
Good morning. Robert Vaughn, Forest Pines Road. It seems like we have an awful lot of equipment down there at the DPW, and I'm curious if all the people that we have hired at the DPW have the licenses to operate this equipment, the operator's license, the class of CDL license, whatever, or do we just have one person that has a license, and if he's not working that day, then that equipment sits idle? It just seems to be an awful lot of capital investment. I mean, there's more pieces of equipment sitting there than I had in my sandbox as a kid, so.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome. How are we doing as far as the certification and staffing in order to operate all the equipment?
To answer that question, everybody has a CDLA license, or B license, B or A license.
Thank you. Thank you. Further questions or comments on Article 8? Seeing none, we will vote on whether or not to spend $225,000 under a 5-year lease with no tax money being spent the first year and $32,000 a year for the remainder of the lease. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed, please raise your hand. Motion appears to pass. It passes, and we will move on to Article 9. If anyone wants to speak, they better get up to that microphone quick. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $40,000 to repair Modoc Hill Road. Motion and second. Thank you, gentlemen, Morrow and Price. And yes, Ms. Schilling.
Yes, sir. Given the recent storm and that Modoc Hill is closed, is there a revision to this number that might be needed, or is the same repair still going to be effective?
First question, no revision. The same number that they put together to fix the culvert pipes is going to hold true. And just wanted to add that I did just this past week, Tuesday I believe it was, get confirmation that the powers that be have declared a federal emergency for that time frame. So this warrant article will be subject to a 75% reimbursement from FEMA. So it'll be a separate project, separate and distinct from the July 16th, 2023 event that we're already working on. But this will be a new one, which we'll submit all the paperwork for to get a reimbursement from FEMA.
Thank you. It's worth noting that our town clerk and fire chief is also our emergency services director. I don't know if I've got the title quite right. And he has taken the lead on making sure the federal government notices Madison and writes us checks like they write to everybody else. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Donna again. Is that reimbursement confirmed?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Well, you just talked about a reimbursement from FEMA. Is that confirmed?
Yeah, absolutely. They declared the emergency, so all we have to do is do the work, submit all of the documentation. You could fill this room with the paperwork that's necessary. And then presumably, nothing is guaranteed in the federal government. It's like the checks in the mail.
That was my question. Thank you.
No, there's a lot of steps I have to take but we are eligible to request that reimbursement, and hopefully they hold true to their word.
Thank you. Okay. Article 9, to see if the town votes to raise and appropriate a sum of $40,000 to repair Modoc Hill Road. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Ayes have it. And we will move forward to Article 10. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $7,000 for the purpose of purchasing a new ballot counting device. This special warrant article would be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 3276 and will not lapse till the purchase of the new ballot counting machine is completed or by December 31st, 2025, whichever is sooner. Do I have a motion and a second from Morrow and Price? Yes, sir. Please speak to this item.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ken D'Amico. I live up in Silver Lake. I'd like to make a motion to switch Article 28 before Article 10 as they contradict one another.
They do. And so if you'd all take a look at Article 28. Yes. Go ahead. I'm sorry. D'Amico. Your first name, sir?
Ken.
Ken D'Amico.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Article 28, you'll see, relates to stopping the use of mechanical, electronic, programmable electronic counting devices. And so Mr. D'Amico is proposing that we change the order of the warrant. Is there a second to that? And consider this one first. Ms. Kramer is the second to that. So now that motion is on the floor. It's a non-debatable motion. You're essentially overruling the moderator, or you're overruling the order of the articles. So we won't have a debate on that, but it does kind of make sense to make sure we consider whether we're going to continue the use or not. Yes, sir. We do, and so I was Thank you. And our Attorney Mayor has accurately pointed out that we have a motion on the floor and a second for Article 10, excuse me, yes, Article 10. And I am going to take into consideration this first, and we'll kind of leave that there and make a decision as to whether we want to consider Article 28 first, as to whether we're going to continue with machines or not. And so I think that does make sense. And so I'd like to hold a vote to see whether we consider Article 28 before we consider Article 10. Does everybody understand what we're voting on? All we're voting on is whether we are now going to consider Article 28 first. Not yay or nay on the article, just which one we do first. So all those in favor of doing Article 28 first, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. The ayes have it. And so we're going to move to Article 28. And it's certainly true that Attorney Mayor, doesn't like articles and motions hanging out there. So you know what? I'm just going to ask the selectmen to withdraw your motion and second for Article 10. That's been done, and we're clean. We've got Article 28 on the floor. Stay right there. So Article 28, by petition, shall the following provisions pertaining to elections be adopted? All voting shall be by paper ballot, and all ballots shall be hand counted only, rather than by use of optical scanning or any other type of programmable electronic counting devices. Mr. D'Amico, would you like to put that motion on the floor?
Yes.
You weren't sure, but yes, because it's by petition, it makes sense for you to be the person putting it on the floor. We have a second to that motion, and Mr. Lucy would like to be there. So Mr. Lucy would be the second to that motion. So this is by petition. Would you like to speak first to this issue?
Yeah, I have...
Please speak into the microphone.
Yeah, I have a little something to say, if I could. I'll try.
Remember, 2 minutes, a reminder for everybody, not particularly you.
I'll try to be pretty quick, coherent with it. About 250 years ago, something important was written in this country, and it started off with "We the people who, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, and ensure domestic tranquility." I don't need to go into the rest of it, but we're not living in tranquility. It's pretty nice in here, but outside in this country, it's nothing. It's nowhere near tranquil. You can't deny that. We've gone through 4 election cycles now, 2016, 18, 20, and 22. They all have something in common other than voting. They all ended up in chaos, screaming, protesting, hatred, and more division. At the forefront of this, people became pretty suspicious of the machines. When people asked for recounts, which is their right, they were met with strong resistance. So that puts more doubt in things. So now people want audits on the machines. Now they're met with lawsuits. So how many election cycles do we need to go through before we can finally figure this out? I mean, our entire nation hand-counted ballots for over 200 years. Did we forget how to count? I mean, do we think that's something, did we think that we're so important that we just don't have the time to wait another couple of hours? We have to have everything within 10 minutes? Are we a little bit too lazy to just get it right the first time and avoid all the doubt? Good things take time. Your home isn't built in one day. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly you're a master guitarist. I could attest to that. Your baby takes time to grow in your body before it's born. Good things definitely take time, and they're worth it. So, in our unending quest to have everything instant, we lose our ability somehow to understand that good things will come if you just be patient. The price to "I want it right now" in our elections is nothing but suspicion and hatred and more division. It's not helping anything. So, is this the world we want to leave for our kids? Really? So how selfish are we that we can't wait a few hours just to ensure that we get it right and ensure the domestic tranquility that our Constitution guaranteed?
Thank you. Thank you. So we have
I have something for you.
Thank you. And so What I'm looking for, what I have here is a petition for a secret ballot, I would ask that the signers of this raise their hand, because I need to confirm that you're physically present at the time of receipt of this. So can I see 5 hands? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, good. Okay. Thank you. All set with that. So we will vote on this particular article by secret ballot, and you'll have plenty of time to buy some pastries. Mr. Vayu.
Mike Vayu. I kind of thought this issue might come up, and I tried to do as much reading as I could on it, trying to weigh as to the validity of going in that direction. To me, we have both in having an electronic digital readout of the results, and then we also have the paper ballots, which exist also. So if there's any point of contention about whether there was something done that's unethical or illegal, we can then quickly count the ballots. And as I would agree completely, as much time as it takes, if it takes 1 day, 2 days, a week, but to not use electronic machines, I think it's just another way to check to make sure that elections are fair and legal.
Thank you. Other speakers?
Mr. Moderator?
Go here first. Yes, ma'am.
Bifocals.
Understood. Believe me.
My name's Michelle Montowski. I'm actually new to Madison. I've only been here for 4 years, if you consider that new. But I did want to speak up regarding the electronic voting machines. And I really hope being this is my first meeting, I'm impressed that everybody has been really kind. I was a little nervous to stand up and speak because I didn't know if I was going to get things thrown at me. But with that, not yet, so please. I just wanted to speak because I think, as Ken and some of the other folks have mentioned, there's a concern about the integrity of our elections. I'm not here to say whether the electronic machines are the answer, whether counting ballots are the answer, but the fact of the matter is members of this community have a concern that their ballot is not being counted accurately. And I think that is something that we all deserve. It's not just having the right to vote, but also to ensure that my vote is being counted accurately. So it doesn't matter what side of the party you're on. We all just want to make sure that our voices are being heard. And being that I spent 30 years in IT, don't know if you remember me, George, but I had worked for you many years ago. I spent my career configuring systems, telling that system, when you do this, I want you to produce that. It's IT logic. It's a stored procedure. I'm not saying that that is happening today, but what I'm saying is there is absolutely a possibility that that data can change once it has been entered in the system. And I know that for a fact because I did it for 30 years. You entered in mail, and I changed your data to send M to your insurance company. So every time you go to the pharmacy and your prescription's not there that the doctor sent, or every time you need to restart your modem because it glitched, ask yourself, is that what I want our voting machines to do? Just a thought.
Thank you. Yes.
Joy Gray. Actually, I also have a 30-year career in IT that started with implementing a human resource and payroll system in DOS. So that's how long it's been. So yeah, technology can be modified, but there are audit logs. I don't think this data is stored out anywhere that it could be audited. It's in a machine. I was here the other day. It spits it out immediately. I do think there are places where technology doesn't belong. You don't need a touch screen in your car. Let's just go back to dials and knobs. But I think this is a good use of technology because it can be backed up with a hand count.
Thank you. Yes.
Deborah Ayers, and
I just would like to say that these voting machines are not connected to the internet, that we have a paper ballot that we fill out and we put it in the machine. It's like a calculator, and we get the results. If we have any question, then we still have paper ballot. So right now we have 2 ways to do this. And we're going to go way back to this? Are we going to the grocery store and having them hand write instead of use the adding machine at the grocery store, the register? I think we're very safe, and I have no question about what's happening count-wise in New Hampshire and especially in Madison. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You can stand a little closer. The COVID's not raging, so you can come up a little bit.
Michael Mosier, Pine Hill Road. I'm human too, so I know with a hand vote that things can be misconstrued as well, can be changed, can be missed accidentally, however, so be it. I've seen how the new systems do work. It seems like it works pretty well. They've gone through it a lot. And if you vote yes to pass this, I please hope to see every one of you volunteer to count here at night, because I know what it takes to get through the counting. I've seen it. And after sitting here all day long from 7 o'clock in the morning like our volunteers do, the last thing they want to do is stay here till 1 o'clock trying to do numbers. So I don't see that it works.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gordon Snyder. I was a moderator of another town in New Hampshire back in the 1980s and early 90s.
How'd you get out of it?
I moved out of town.
You moved out
so
of
I could
town.
no longer do it.
Probably what it comes down to.
And we had those machines. They worked very well, and that's going back, more than 30 years now. If you don't like the result, you still got that paper ballot. You can have a recount. And if you've been up on some of these big elections back past midnight where people are trying to count, they're getting bleary-eyed, the hand counts may not be as good. And if you get a recount, what happens is they come back days later and they have a lot of time to recount. And people are worried about things, but that's really, I think, the best system we have. It's kind of interesting, too, that if you take a look at the challenges that have made, how accurate those counting machines have been. And you still already have that. So I would strongly recommend that you vote this one down.
Thank you.
Christina McAllister from Plains Road. I worked in IT also for 40 years, and computers are very consistent. They do what they're told. If they're told a bad thing, they'll do it. If they're told a good thing, they'll do it. I participated in the hand counting the other day for the first time. I was interested in it. I thought it would be fun to see what the process is, and I did. And it was very interesting, and it was very fun. The first thing we did was take everything that the machine spit out to look at it. It spits out things that are written in. So we looked at those and we separated everything that the machine spit out into what actually had write-ins and what didn't. And then we went to tally the write-ins. And in doing that, we found some that didn't have write-ins. The process we just went through had errors. People make errors. I urge you to vote for voting machines.
Thank you. And thank you for your service the other night. Much appreciated. It's fun at 8 o'clock. It is, as someone who was doing this 35 years ago, it was less fun at 10:30. But do we have any other comments or questions? Yes, sir.
I have participated in vote counting over the last 24 years. And some dozen years or so, just before we bought this machine, I was doing a hand count with Mr. Papazian, fine gentleman. And I remember we got about halfway through, there was about 6 groups of us counting and marking, and he got up about halfway through the process and he said, "This is somewhat archaic." And it was from that point on, that following year, we voted to have a vote counting machine. There can be just as many errors hand counting as there are in that machine. Mr. Brooks runs tests through that machine before that machine even enters this building. Tests are done to be sure the counts are accurate. I'd be in favor of that vote counting machine. And again, someone did say, that machine is isolated just to us. It's not online. It's not linked to some master computer somewhere. It's a very simple process. It's a glorified adding machine.
Thank you. I have a responsibility as moderator to oversee the elections. Town Clerk Brooks does much of the work associated with that, but I still have that responsibility. It's a public process. The testing process on the machines is a public process. You are invited and able to watch the testing that's done. The magnetic card is sealed into the machine, and there's a chain of custody process where signatures are required each time the seal is removed and then reattached with a numbered seal, and the signatures associated with that ensure that it would require multiple individuals to participate in modifying it. The only other point I would add is that there have been roughly 15,000 elections in which machines in New Hampshire have participated. I think that's a low number, but that's my estimate over the past 20-plus years. And if you pick, say, 10 as the number of races on each of those, which is probably too low, but there have been at least 150,000 races decided by machine. And you, I think, are aware of the lack of any major conspiracy-oriented errors that associated with those 150,000 races. I think those are statistical pieces of information. But the point that was made about a lack of trust in the voting system by some is an important one. And regaining trust and confidence in the counting process is really, really important. I'm not telling you how to vote. It wouldn't be appropriate to tell you how to vote on this one way or the other. But to the degree that you can be more involved, that you can watch the testing process, participate in it, participate in the counting process, to call for recounts if you do have a concern about the results. Let's be aggressive. Let's watch it very closely and take the time in order to do that oversight. Because as was pointed out by Mr. D'Amico, doing it right and guarding the integrity of our elections is a time-consuming process. And I appreciate the comments by everyone here. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning, William Cherry, Moores Pond. I was just curious, the amount of people that live in the town physically, full-time residents?
About 2,800. The number of people currently is
3,006 on the checklist.
We broke 3,000. Another opportunity for applause, everyone. No. I think when we weren't using machines, we were probably about half that population, which is interesting. What's the current voting number of people registered to vote? 2,000 people registered to vote. Yes, sir.
So I was just curious, I believe it was just over 400 people voted in the last election cycle.
That's about right. In the town election, we wind up with somewhere around 1,500 out of our 2,000 vote in a presidential election and that sort of thing. So participation in the town elections is far lower.
Okay, so I was just curious to purchase $7,000 voting machine to count 500 pieces of paper. Is it really feasible? Is it something that's necessary, or is it?
Good question again.
I understand it could go up at some point, depending on the subject. It may go up, maybe half the town comes to vote at one period of time.
Well, picture the fact that I'm going to guess roughly 25 items were voted on Tuesday. And that's for those 400 or 500 times 25 is what you're counting. But it is, in fact, November, where we have 1,500 people voting and many races to be decided. So there are, I don't know, you would have many thousands of items being counted, along with all of the write-ins. And for those of you who find it entertaining to write Bugs Bunny in, that is not helpful to our process, and it's insulting to the people who are volunteering their time and energy. So that is very good. Thank you. Attorney Mayer is being really helpful, Bill, this year, and because I wanted him to do a little more for you last year, but he is over and above board here today, and I do appreciate his guidance, and he's trying not to embarrass me by pointing out all the things I'm screwing up. He keeps giving me little whispers, but I thank you. I do appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Julie Shields. One of the things that we do in accounting is we add things up twice, and you have a tape. Have we thought about having two machines and compiling the figures and
so there are
as a
many
check and balance?
checks to the voting process. If you take something like a primary, it's really a complex process that keeps us here for a long time because you're counting how many Democrats voted, Republicans, independents, what ballot did they take, and all those things. I'm not going to try to explain it because I get confused each time doing it, but the number of cross checks is very significant because they're manual cross checks as well as the machine number. So we're counting the number of ballots we receive, the number, blank ballots, the number that were given out, how many of each party were given out. So there are many cross checks to it, but the ultimate cross check is to request a recount, which is permissible. People have mentioned that. And there have been hundreds, thousands of recounts over 20 plus years statewide, and they do a very nice job of confirming the accuracy of the voting machines and so on. But that is something people should do here. They should request recounts, and as the gentleman who is the former moderator points out, doing a recount a week later in the light of day, everybody awake, they've had their coffee, is a very different experience than trying to count a whole bunch of ballots piled up at 10:30 at night. And the accuracy of those counts when they're done as recounts is a different process. But yeah, it all takes time, and I'm not disagreeing with you. Having two machines and running the ballots through two machines honestly is probably not permitted under state law. I'll keep our attorney out of this one, but it's a debate among attorneys as to whether moderator could just order a recount done on his own behest. Probably not, but there are a lot of opportunities for checks and balances to occur. Running it through to the machine and double counting that way is probably not permissible without a request for a recount. That's how the state law, I interpret it as reading, and Mr. Mayer can disagree. Yes, we can move the question, and we don't need to move the question, we can just proceed. So we have a ballot box set up over there, just one dark brown, I'm sorry, we have two ballot boxes, a light brown one over there and a dark brown one over there. But listen to me before you do anything. So, excuse me. It's right here. So This is our first secret ballot vote, perhaps our last one. And you will tear out the letter A markers here, A no and A yes. And you'll tear it in half. And you'll just put in letter A yes or letter A no. If you put in letter B, it's not going to be counted. You have to be letter, what's that? We're voting on 28. I'll repeat that. But just so you understand, you can start perforating and tearing here. You just put one side, A or B, in. It has to have the letter A. If you put in yes, you'll be saying you would like to approve Article 28. That ballot should be hand counted only. Hand counted only. And that would be your preference. If you vote no, then you would not be supporting that change in our vote counting process. I think what I'll do is pause the meeting for 5 minutes while you drop your ballots in there, and then reconvene the meeting. And I will ask Becky to take responsibility with whoever else she assigns to count the results of this ballot entry. So please proceed. If you have any questions, let me know, but letter A, yes or no. And we are adjourned for 5 minutes, because that's all it will take.
Yes and no.
15 seconds. Make sure you put your letter A in there. Thank you all for getting food from the PTO. Bill Lord, I can't believe you don't want to do this full time. I'm extremely disappointed in your volunteerism there, but it's all right. And here he comes. So, heck with it. So the voting is closed on Article 28, and I'm going to ask the team to start counting. But we're going to move right on to Article 11. We're going to leave Article 10 for the moment because we want to hear the results of Article 28 first. So Article 11, see if the town votes to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be placed in the previously established Highway Heavy Equipment Expendable Trust Fund. Do I have a motion, a second? Mr. Price, Mr. Morrow? Any discussion? This is simply setting aside monies so that we spread out the cost and we don't have big taxable events all occurring in one year. We make these donations to the Expendable Trust Fund each year to spread out the costs. Any discussion with regard to Article 11? Motions, amendments? Seeing none, we'll vote on Article 11. All those in favor of raising $10,000 to put in the Highway Heavy Equipment Expendable Trust Fund, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed, please raise your hand. Article passes, and we move on to wherever I put my pen. So I'm going to it's on the floor. Thank you. Boy, I need more help than I used to doing this. Okay. Article 12. See if town votes to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be placed in the previously established Transfer Station Capital Projects Expendable Trust Fund. Moved and seconded, Mr. Morrow, Mr. Aruda. And just take note that Article 8 up above, it was from there that we're removing, let's get it right, $50,000 from this fund to help buy that $225,000 truck. We're putting $15,000 back in if we vote for Article 12. That would come from taxation. Any comments, questions, amendments to Article 12? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of Article 12, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed, please raise your hand. Article 12 passes. And we'll move to Article 13. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to place in previously established Assessing Expendable Trust Fund. Mr. Price and Mr. Morrow. It costs us, what, $120,000 or so to do our every 5-year statutorily required reassessment, and we put aside funds each year in preparation for that. We have one coming up next year, so be aware that your property values will go up, undoubtedly, but your tax rate should go down to offset that, and only people who own lakefront property really get clobbered because it goes up faster, but that's a whole nother issue. So $10,000 is the amount to place in there if you wish to continue to fund what is required now by the state government. It wasn't in the past, but it now is, that these revaluations occur with regularity. Discussions or questions on Article 13? Seeing none, all those in Article 13, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed? Article 13 passes. See if the town votes to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be placed in the previously established Historical Society Building Improvement Expendable Trust Fund. Mr. Morrow and Mr. Price. Discussion or comments on Article 14? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of Article 14, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Article 14 passes. The results from Article 28 are yes 22, no 130. So Article 28 is defeated. So I will move back to Article 10, and we will restart, excuse me, Article 10. See if the town will vote to raise an appropriate sum of $7,000 for the purpose of purchasing a new ballot counting device. This special warrant article will be a non-lapsing appropriation per RSA 3276. Will not lapse until the purchase of the new ballot counting device is completed or by December 31st, 2025, whichever is sooner. Mr. Morrow, Mr. Price. That motion is on the floor. I would just comment that Mr. Brooks and team have been active participants in evaluating the specific machines. I have been less directly involved, but have been watching this process for 2 years as the state has evaluated machines for a whole variety of things, including better handling of the paper, including security, including the continued use of paper ballots as the backup and as the basis for recounts. This has been a long process. Jackson, the town of Jackson, is apparently one of the very few that's gone ahead and purchased a machine with special dispensation from the Ballot Law Commission, which has been very much involved. Brad Cook heads the Ballot Law Commission, someone I know, an attorney from law firm in Manchester, and a bipartisan fella, and someone who's pretty meticulous. The process isn't done yet. There's still additional testing being done after 2 years, and additional things for them to go through. But everyone recognizes that the machine we have, which is the same as the machine used throughout the state, is a technology that's 30 years old. The magnetic cards that are in it, I am one of the few living people who could still program one of those things. They are in machine language. It's crazy. Ancient technology. And simply fixing the mechanical components of it are becoming more difficult. Town Clerk Brooks will take the lead in making with me the final decision about which machine to buy with the guidance of the state. We both suggested that the state recommend only one machine. They are probably recommending two. They're not quite done yet, which for a state the size of New Hampshire strikes both of us as an odd thing. But we will be working hard at that. Any of you have any questions or concerns about that? It really is a very open process, and the Ballot Law Commission would be the source of additional information on it. So I convey that information, and that's why this is a non-lapsing vote, non-lapsing allocation, so that if we are unable to buy it in the next few months for the presidential election, and I'd like to have it for the presidential election, but we don't want to unless we're really sure we've got the right machine and we've selected one that's completed all the testing process. So it might be the following year that we actually purchase a new one. But we do need a new one. The other one's dying. Questions? Yes, sir.
George, I just wanted to add that this isn't something I want to do necessarily, but you say dying, I just say they're not going to support it any further with the programming of those cards. As you referenced, you retired, so now they have nobody left to program them. But so the technology is old, so if we're going to continue to have a machine, we need to get a new one because the old one will no longer be supported. We won't be able to use it without their support, and they're not going to support it.
And they're great. On election day, you call them up, and they're here in an hour, and they bring a spare machine if they need to. The service we get is very good on a difficult day. Yes, sir. Any questions, comments? No? All those in favor of Article 10, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Thank you. Let the minutes reflect Mr. D'Amico's opposition. I think he deserves to be in the minutes. Thank you. Article 15. Excuse me. Article 15, to see if town will vote to raise and appropriate sum of $10,000 to be placed in the previously established Silver Lake Dam Improvement Expendable Trust Fund. Moved and seconded, Maruda and Price. Discussion or comments on it? What's this really going to cost us in the end to fix this thing? Anybody have any idea?
As of right now, the estimate is close to the total project.
Yeah, no, the expressions on people's faces, I can't figure out what's $1 million there, but I do know we need that dam. The dam is wonderful because it keeps our lake under control and it dumps all the overwater that we don't want into Ossipee Lake, and they all get flooded, all their homes. They don't know that. And so so I am a big fan of the dam, but $1 million is just crazy. But and the milfoil goes to them as well. We ship the milfoil right down to Ossipee. If you could edit that out of the video. Any discussion or comments? Yes, sir.
Mark Fonts, Go Hill Road. Can you just enlighten us a little bit more? You said it's going to cost $1 million. Is that all going to come from Madison taxpayers? It is. And it'll be a bond. Okay. All right. And what's the condition of the dam now? How far along are we in the process?
We are still in the process of assessing its current condition. But we know that it needs certain repairs as of now. We just don't know what exactly those repairs are or what we need along them. Mr. Bertram has helped us in hiring a people to assess its current condition.
So is it possible it will be fixable without the $1 million, or you think it's probably need to be replaced and we get into the big bucks?
Yeah, the $1 million is fixing it. Replacing it would be a lot more.
I got a hammer, if you need me. Okay, all right. Yes, sir.
Joe Dan again. Hey, I researched the history of that dam as part of our budget committee. It was built in the 1920s. So, it's 100 years old. And so, the repairs that are needed are needed. It's just washing out below the dam and that type of thing. Just wanted to be aware that the dam is 100 years old.
Just a reminder, in addition to a very nice turnout here for town meeting today, there are 22 people at home watching live, and that's cool. I was just home from the hospital and I watched it. Bill, I fell asleep. But I was on drugs, so it wasn't because of you. On Madison TV, thank you, Madison TV. That's exactly right. And to our videographer, the whole team. It is a wonderful service to the town and keeping us all aware of what's going on. So we are prepared to vote on Article 15. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? Motion passes. Yeah, we ought to build a new dam every 100 years or so. That's probably a good idea. Article 16, to see if town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be added to the previously established capital reserve fund for land acquisition and conservation purposes. Moved and seconded by Morrow and Price. Yes, sir.
Ralph Legend. I speak for the Conservation Commission, and we appreciate the support of the public for all our endeavors. We just had a recent situation with a public hearing with town of Chain of Ponds.
A little closer.
With Chain of Ponds, and we had an outstanding showing from the public and indication of support. So this is very important to us that we continue our endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marcia McKenna.
Voters at town meeting have historically supported this article to build the capital reserve fund for land acquisition. This consistent funding by the town demonstrated to the large national conservation organizations Madison's commitment to land preservation. This is what attracted the Conservation Fund, a large, well-funded national group, to partner with the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust in purchasing the chain of ponds. The town's efforts have also helped with grant writing to fund the chain of ponds acquisition. This is incredibly important to the grant writing process to have the documented commitment by the town to fund this article annually. The funding and grant writing continue for the chain of ponds, so it's very important this year that the town once again supports this article for land preservation in Madison. And thank you to the town, because it's because of your efforts that we're able to do the chain of ponds finally after 20 years, and it's pretty exciting to know that that's going to come to completion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And it's worth noting the Upper Valley Land Trust is, the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust is the key to protecting that land, nonprofit organization, and I just speak on their recognizing their contribution, major contribution to this. So, Article 16, further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes. Article 17, see if the town vote to establish groundwater remediation expendable trust fund per RSA 3119A for the purposes of conducting a focused site investigation of groundwater conditions as directed by New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services and any necessary remediation, and appropriate the sum of $35,000 for this purpose, and further to name the selectmen as agents to expend from this fund. Moved and seconded. Mr. Arruda, Mr. Morrow. Thank you. Specifically, this groundwater survey is to check on water that serves what buildings?
There's one primary well located behind the library, just off their pavement of the parking area, that is piped into the fire station and then pipes out back to the library, up to the town hall, and the highway garage adjacent to town hall. So there's one well supplying water to all of those buildings. This issue arose, a neighbor across the street had an issue with groundwater in 2020. In 2021, the state DES asked us to conduct a water test, which we did. The results came back positive for PFAS chemicals, and we submitted the test to the state as requested. They didn't ask us to do anything else. They asked us to conduct another test in 2022, which we did. The results came back, and I should have started by saying I don't understand the chemistry of all of this, but the numbers came back lower in the 22 tests than they were in 2021, but they still weren't low enough. So the state has directed us to conduct a focused site investigation to determine the actual levels in the ground and where it might be coming from. If I knew any more than that, I'd certainly tell you. Until they come in, they're going to come in this spring if this is approved, and they're going to put some PVC pipe in the ground. They call them test wells, but they bore a hole and put a piece of pipe in so they can collect groundwater samples. And they're going to do what they do, test, and once their findings are known, a plan will be developed to do any remediation that we need to do. So I'd love to tell you that this is it, but the fact is we don't know. The first step is to get the testing done, the focused site investigation. If we have to remediate, chances are this is going to be expensive. But right now we don't know the contamination that we have on our side is different from our neighbor across the street. It's not the same chemicals. So
Can we send some of the water that we send to Ossipee to the Article 17? I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean
well, we're not, that is kind of humorous, but I don't want to make light of this situation. It's serious, but we just don't know how serious it is, other than anything is bad. Contamination of groundwater is not good. We all know that. So I would urge you, and this isn't personal to me, although I take a lot of pride living in this town. I've lived here my whole life. I urge you to support this. I know it's a lot of money. It may be a lot more money down the line, but whatever it is, the state's going to make us pay it. Or, depending on how bad it is, they may step in and help us. But we got to identify what we're dealing with first. This is the step we need to take, and I urge you to support this article. Because if you don't, you're not going to save the money. The state's going to come in and do it themselves and then send us a bill. So, in this case, the selectmen have engaged a professional engineering firm with expertise in this area of work, and we'd rather work with our own people rather than have the state come in and tell us what to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
I should have come prepared with that, Mark. I'm sorry. The name of the firm, they're out of Derry, and I can get you that name. I don't have it with me today.
Wilcox and Barton.
Thank you, Linda. It's Wilcox and Barton is the name of the agency. And again, they're from, I believe it's Derry or Salem. They're down south somewhere.
Thank you. Further comments on or questions on Article 17? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes. Article 18, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $9,896 to be placed in the PEG TV Expendable Trust Fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, which represents unused franchise fees from the 2023 operating budget. Moved and seconded by the Selectmen, Price and Ruda. Just a note, this was mentioned earlier by the Budget Committee. This does come from the subscribers to Spectrum TV, and a portion of their fees goes into this, what's referred to as franchise fees, and that's what funds this money that goes into potential future purchase of equipment for Madison TV. Questions or comments? I'm sorry? And to pay the videographers, absolutely, and much appreciated. There's information in your books about their pay and everything else. Very transparent. All those in favor of Article 18, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed? I'm sorry. It passed. Did you want it to pass, or were you hoping to defeat it with a speech?
Hi, I'm Mary Cronin. I did want it to pass, and I just want to know if there's a plan for sustaining this line item, because I suspect that many people are dropping Spectrum as their cable provider and internet provider. So just to understand that the revenue stream is probably going to get smaller and smaller if it hasn't already. So I would support any kind of plan for sustainability beyond using franchise fees.
Thank you. I think what I'll ask is for next year, if there are any issues about a decline in revenue from Spectrum as people like me sign up for YouTube TV and access Madison TV via the direct internet site, which is terrific. But do you have a plan now for declining use of, or declining availability of those franchise fees?
Not really. We are stuck with, at the moment, Spectrum, and there's no plan to change it. However, I should note that our contract with Spectrum was up last April. So we are operating right now under no contract with Spectrum. They refused to negotiate with us. We've got a lawyer involved. nothing is happening, and we can't keep it moving. Now, I don't know this is pure speculation on my part. There is nothing that holds us back, I believe, from negotiating with another provider, providing the service. That's just speculation on my part. But anyway, so we are without a contract at the moment.
Thank you. It is a time of change in that field. At this point, though, Article 18, all those in favor of raise and appropriate funds for Madison TV, please raise your hand.
Yeah, we already voted.
Yeah, but then she spoke, and then all those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, thank you, it passes. All right. Yeah, that wasn't my finest moment. If you're watching at home, don't watch the replay on that one. Article 19, to see if town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the purpose of forest maintenance. The entire amount to come from the previously established forest maintenance account and no amount to be raised by taxation. Moved and seconded, Mr. Price, Mr. Morrow. Any discussion here? Does this come primarily from current use removal and from timber taxes? Where does the money come from that goes into the forest maintenance account?
Sale of timber.
Sale of timber, the timber tax, essentially.
No.
Oh, our timber.
Sale of our
Yeah, we have timber on the town forest and so on. So, thank you. Yeah, cool. We are all foresters at heart. Yes, sir.
Mark Fonts, Go Hill Road. Question, did I see we do not have a town forester? That position is not filled, that's correct. So are we contracting with somebody to survey? And are they, I had a meeting in the Capitol, and the state forester said that there is an insect called red pine scale that is in the Ospey Town Forest now, so could very soon be in our town forest and is pretty devastating to red pine.
Everything you said is correct. We do have a forester that works very closely with the Conservation Commission, but for whatever reason, for my lifetime, there's a stigma. These gentlemen are in business, and they don't want the label of town forester. They don't want to be a town official. They're happy to help us, and he works with us, and we do have a contract with him. He does provide service to us, but they don't want that title.
And has he made recommendations, he or she made recommendations with regards to how to mitigate the red pine scale issue?
We haven't specifically discussed red pine scale, but most recently in the past year, the issue with the gypsy moss and the oak trees has been heavily discussed, and I'm certain he makes recommendations, and the forestry plans that we have are his.
We get a fair amount of money from the harvest, is that not correct?
No, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
so that's, I mean, from the way the state forester spoke, that's in jeopardy
Right.
because of this insect.
And I'm sure, like I say, I can't recall photographically, but he has a plan to look at the oak trees this year to see how they foliate and what kind of a problem we're going to have going forward with that issue. And I just can't remember a number of these. I call them blights because I'm not a expert in that field, but he makes us aware of them and discusses a plan of action with the commission.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Well, let the minutes reflect an interest in the red pine and protecting those as well. Okay, any further discussion with regard to Article 19? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes. Article 20, to see if town will vote pursuant to RSA 4111A to designate land known as MAP 116, Lot 23, as conservation land to be managed and regulated by the Conservation Commission in accordance with RSA 36A4. Moved and seconded by Price and Morrow. Discussion, could you just tell us where this lot is? Anyone?
It's off of Davis Pond.
Off of?
Davis Pond.
Davis Pond, okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
This lot is 12.1 acres, fairly small piece of territory. However, the benefit of making it conservation land is that it works to continue conservation properties all the way down from the chain of ponds, so it's beneficial in that respect.
We already own it.
Pardon me?
We already own that property.
It's tax, it was, yes, it is owned by the town. It is not really developable because it is wetlands. So the benefit is really clear in terms of that it does connect all the other properties if the chain of ponds happens.
Gotcha. Thank you. So Article 20, yes.
Just wanted to point out that this piece of land will connect to another piece that's going to be transferred in ownership to the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust. And this, again, is another helpful piece of information for the grant writers for the chain of ponds, because it once again shows the town's commitment to preserving and fostering good land stewardship for the chain of ponds area.
Thank you. So, Article 20. If there's no further discussion, we'll vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Opposed? Motion passes. Article 21. See if the town will vote to adopt the amendments proposed by the Advisory Budget Committee to the town's budgeting ordinance adopted in at the 1991 town meeting, amended on May 11th, 2021 town meeting, at the May 11th, 2021 town meeting, which include changing the appointment of members to better align with New Hampshire RSA 669-61. Copies of the amended budget ordinance are on file with the town clerk, posted with the warrant, and available at town meeting. And yes, in fact, they are. And so there is a single piece of paper with the word budgeting ordinance just down from the top, and there's a little bit of red on the bottom there. And so I'm going to ask for a motion to put this on the floor, Morrow and Price. And as an extra bonus, I'll read the red part. Notice there's a deleted part in the previous paragraph up above. So the red part says appointments will be made, appointments made to fill vacancies will be made by the chairman of the budget committee. The appointee shall serve until the position may be placed on the next official ballot at the upcoming annual town meeting, at which time the voters shall elect an officer for the balance of the unexpired term. I'll take a quick shot at it and hopefully be clearer than as an algebra teacher. So prior to that, if you read up above, if it was a 3-year term, somebody leaves their office at the end of the first year, the person appointed to fill that slot would have stayed to the end of the 3-year term for 2 more full years if they had made it through 1 year of a 3-year term. What this says is more in keeping with other positions, particularly positions of an official municipal budget act town, which we are not, but we wanted to be apparently consistent with that. And so this says, gee, if you're at the beginning of your 3-year term and you leave office, the person appointed to fill your position only holds that office till the next election. As soon as there's a chance to put it on the ballot, you then would be voting at that next election for a new 3-year term for the individual, rather than be appointed for the remainder of the 3 years. Is that all reasonably clear to people? So, yes, sir.
Just to clarify one thing you said, George, it really has nothing to do with the fact that it's the budget committee. It just happens to be. The fact is that the position is elected. If the person walked away from it, then the appointment under the current, without this amendment, the chairman of the advised budget committee has more authority appointment-wise than the selectmen do, because he can currently appoint somebody for 2 years.
Thank you.
It's making town-wide the same standard apply across all elected positions, not treating the budget committee differently from any other elected position.
Thank you. Good clarification. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure, Mr. Moderator, whether we had a second to that, but
We did. I believe I had both Price and Morrow on it.
Well, I'd like to propose an amendment to this amendment And
Well, this isn't an amendment for the purpose of the town meeting. So we're on Article 21, and right now, all we have is Article 21 on the floor, and now, I understand, you're going to propose an amendment to Article 21.
this would be an addition. No selectman, town manager, or member of the school board, village district commissioner, full-time employee, or part-time department head of the town, school district, or village district, or other associated agency shall serve as a member, as an elected member of the advisory budget committee. Every elected member shall be domiciled in the town and shall cease to hold office immediately upon ceasing to be so domiciled. And this is basically...
So we have an amendment proposed by Chairman Fernandez. Is there a second to that amendment? Ms. Schilling, and now Ms. Fernandez will speak to adding this additional language. Go ahead, Mr. Fernandez.
This is basically wording from the New Hampshire RSA 3215, Chapter 5, which applies to the full budget debates. We are not under that wording, but I think it's appropriate because as a budget committee, I don't think you want to have people on the budget committee whose actual budget and salaries will be affected by their votes, which, in my opinion, should be independent elected members of the community who have no particular interest in how this would affect their salaries or their positions.
So we have two separate steps here. The first is to decide whether to add this particular language that Mr. Fernandez is proposing to the change to the ordinance. So whether or not this incompatibility of offices language, which is what this is referred to, should be added. There's no handout to you, so I'm just going to read it one more time and then take additional comments from people. So he's suggesting that in addition to the change that you received as a handout, that the following language be added to the ordinance. No selectman, town manager, member of the school board, village district commissioner, full-time employee or part-time department head of the town, school district, or village district, or other associated agency shall serve as an elected member of the advisory budget committee. Every elected member shall be domiciled in the town and shall cease to hold office immediately upon ceasing to be so domiciled. That's the language, and I'll probably read it again before we have any vote. Any comments on that amendment, adding that amendment?
I was only going to ask for it in writing.
I will give it to you, I promise. I just received it at the beginning of the meeting. So the first question is whether or not to vote in favor of the amendment and add that additional incompatibility of offices language to the ordinance. Do you want to speak? Yes, sir.
Sorry, bud. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bill Dempster, 157 Doe Drive. I have a question for the Budget Committee that proposed the amendment. Does this apply to all of the boards or just to the Budget Committee?
This is my proposal, not the budget committee's proposal. It applies only to the ordinance and applies to the budget committee.
Only the budget committee.
It's only for the Budget Committee.
Now, there's similar language, and the attorney can wade through all that if you wanted to for a lot of other positions in the town, but this is specific to the budget committee.
Okay, so the original warrant article was, even though it was for the Budget Committee, it was applicable, I think you said it was applicable to all the other.
No, I think the point was that it now is consistent with the other elected officials.
Got it. I can go back to sleep now.
You can, yeah.
Mike Vayu, I didn't quite understand in regards to the appointed member of the select board to the budget committee, if they are in fact an employee in any capacity, are they allowed to serve?
Yes, it's very clear that the restriction is only for those serving as an elected member of the Budget Committee. So we are about to vote on whether to amend the proposal you have in the handout to add, nothing changing in what's on the handout, but to add an additional paragraph. No selectman, town manager, member of the school board, village district commissioner, full-time employee, or part-time department head of the town, school district, or village district, or other associated agency shall serve as an elected member of the advisory budget committee. Every elected member shall be domiciled in the town and shall cease to hold office immediately upon ceasing to be so domiciled. So, yes, sir.
Question, is this retroactive, like to take effect next year?
It would take effect now, but only for elections that occur after now. So in practical terms, it wouldn't take effect, unless someone disagrees with me, until the next, our March vote next year. Look, we have a individual who won a race for a position on the Budget Committee on Tuesday. And he is a part-time department head, and I believe would fall under this change. And he would not be permitted to run again for that position if that were the case, and he would serve this year. I have no idea at the end of the year whether he would be unable to continue to serve in that position under this change in the ordinance. Would you like to comment?
I honestly don't.
Yeah, good.
I don't know how to answer that question, just because it is not something I think a lot of municipalities encounter, that the qualifications of office change midterm. A lot of the what's called the incompatibility of office statutes that relate to a municipal official, they have existed, been on books for decades, if not centuries.
We'll let you research that in the future unless you have anything to add.
No, that's exactly, it's a long-winded way to say that. Either I or Attorney Johnson would have to research it more fully.
Mr. Brooks, would you like to comment?
No comment. A question to you, George, that to request a legal explanation. The selectmen had to conduct a public hearing on the language that was proposed for Article 21, and my question is, is this amendment legal without having had a prior public hearing? Because the subject matter of amending the budgeting ordinance was warned, but this is much different. The amendment on the floor is much different than what was proposed as an amendment to be voted on at this meeting.
A good and fun topic. Attorney Mayer and I could probably debate this a little bit. I don't even know if we would debate it. I think that the content of the initial change, the one that was discussed at the public hearing, was about the term of office and time in office and the filling of the position of an advisory budget committee member. This places additional restrictions on the filling of that position. I would accept it unless Attorney Mayer just wants to pound the table and says it's completely out of order. What do you think?
I view your points as twofold. One is, can an amendment be made absent the public hearing on the floor of the town meeting? On that question, I believe yes. This is if a select board member is going to propose the ordinance, and the hearing has to go. But I don't believe that the select board by an ordinance can control or restrain the vote of the legislative body enacting the petition. They certainly can propose changes otherwise. And that is something that Attorney Johnson such that a hypothetical voter would have made a decision to either show up or not show up at this meeting had they known about the change. And I tend to agree with the moderator on that position.
Thank you. Feel free to just say, I tend to agree with the moderator, and stop talking. That's all. We have a relationship. It's not a good relationship, but we have.
Could I ask, when the public hearing was requested, why was this paragraph not in?
Perfectly reasonable question. Chairman Fernandez, do you have any response?
Because I did not think to bring it up.
These are the answers I like. Okay. So we are still prepared to vote just on whether to amend the handout associated with Article 21. We're not voting on the final article yet, just to amend it to add this additional restriction. No selectman, town manager, member of the school board, school district commissioner, full-time employee, or part-time department head of the town, school district or village district, or other associated agency shall serve as an elected member of the advisory budget committee. Every elected member shall be domiciled in the town and shall cease to hold office immediately upon ceasing to be so domiciled. I'm not going to read that again. The current elected official who won that race on Tuesday will serve at least for the coming year. That's clear, and we'll do a little research to see if he would continue in that position if this passes. So, all those in favor of adding this additional restriction to people serving on the Advisory Budget Committee, please raise your hand if you're in favor of that. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, the ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. And now we're going to vote on Article 21 with two changes to it, two functional changes. One being, I'm not going to read it all again, the red line stuff that says that you only serve until the next election if you are a replacement, and the one we just approved to restrict people who can serve in that position. So we're voting on Article 21 to make those changes to the town budgeting ordinance. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Thank you. Motion passes, and we move on to Article 22. You have another handout associated with Article 22. Yes, sir. Oh, yes. And you already have this. So, okay. Article 22, to see if the town will vote, will vote to adopt. The word TO was left out, but I don't care. To see if the town will vote to adopt the amended building permit ordinance as proposed by the Board of Selectmen, with the same to replace the building permit ordinance as adopted by the town meeting in 1980. Copies of the amended building permit ordinance are on file with the town clerk, posted with the warrant, and available at town meeting. Moved and seconded by Price and Morrow. I have it here in front of me. I am definitely not going to try to read this, but there are three pertinent changes in here. One is to add a mechanical component to the building permit, mechanical changes that are done, and you can read through here related to wiring, plumbing, gas piping, and the like. Another change is that you don't have to get a building permit if the amount of work is $5,000 now. It had been $1,000, so you have to have a somewhat bigger project before you have to go get a permit. And again, it's all scattered through here. Near the end, there's reference to the fact that the fees for a building permit will increase generally from $30 to $50. There are square footage things and so on that didn't change, but basically near the end it's changing the fees from $30 to $50, which I've been told is reasonably in line with other towns in the area. So fewer people will have to get building permits, but if you get one, you got to pay a little bit more, and there's mechanical aspects of the project covered in that. Comments or questions with regard to Article 22? Yes, sir.
Eric Edwards, 44 Forest Pines Road. Just for line D, for the 5,000, I'd like to make amends for 500 because I've had to get work done lately. Front door costs $5,000. You don't need to get a permit to get a new front door. It doesn't matter if your neighbors like it or not. I just want to make an amends to, let's get this up because you can't do much with $5,000 anymore.
So, stick with me for just 1 second. Yeah, I don't see why you can't. Sure. So we have a motion to amend the... That's correct. You're amending a separate piece of paper that's referenced in the article as opposed to the article itself. Okay. And as Mr. Brooks pointed out, that's fine. So you're proposing to amend the dollar figure on the first page from a minimum of $5,000 to trigger the need for building permit to a figure of $8,500?
$8,500, correct.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Ms. Nordland, who's probably put in a couple of doors and wants that to be done. Is there any further discussion with regard to just the amendment to increase the amount? We would get somewhat fewer dollars in building permit fees because there'd be fewer building permits for that gap between $5,000 and $8,500. Yes, sir, you'd like to speak? You don't have to go away, just move to the side.
My name's Reed Heath, Walnut Loop. I was thinking about building a little mini house. I can buy online used materials. I can probably build it about 100 square feet, put a bathroom in it, electric, maybe some electric heat, and put it on my lot, and I can do it all for $8,500 if I do it myself. Do I need a permit?
Yes, well, with the $8,500 change, would he need a permit? Yes, because it's an additional dwelling unit?
Because no, it's not a dwelling, it's just my little man room.
It's outside the existing footprint, which is covered in that article.
I'll connect it. So my point is...
Build a little hallway?
I can, yeah. My point is $8,500 is too much. A front door you might buy an expensive front door, but I don't think that the building permit ordinance is asking for a permit on a front door, is it? How I read it, it doesn't. But $8,500 is too much money. I think that just gives people the scope of doing all kinds of things. That's a lot of money in some spots, but not a lot if you're hiring somebody maybe. I just think we've got to be careful and keep that number lower. And $5,000, in my opinion, is a little too high.
$5,000 is too high. Thank you. Fine. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, let's hear from people.
Cheryl Harris, Conway Road. I don't think that that's too much money to ask for. If I'm going to go put a shed on my property that costs $5,000, then I'm going to need a permit to put that structure on my property. $8,500 is not a lot to ask.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I did a ladies first thing there. You were standing there first. Yes, go ahead.
Bob Boyd, I'm the code enforcement officer for town.
Speak right into that microphone.
Bob Boyd, code enforcement officer for the town. I just want to point out the comment's been made that it's $5,000 for a building permit. There are 2 times you need permits in town. One is for any footprint change, regardless of the cost. This part is only dealing with the non-footprint change type of building permit. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Boyd, for taking good care of me recently. Yes, sir.
Mike Vayu, I thought also included whether you do it or you have a builder do it, labor still is part of that formula. And so if you built that structure, your labor's worth a lot more. It's probably more than as much as the materials.
Yours is, mine's not. But yes, Mr. Boyd.
Just to further clarify, the value that we're talking about is based on having someone else do the job for you.
Even if you do it yourself?
Right. So this includes materials and labor. So you have to base it. I can do a lot of work at my house myself and save a lot of money. But if I'm doing a project that it would cost me this much to have someone do it, I need a building permit.
Thank you.
So, and the permit fee is very cheap for these.
Thank you. Okay, so, excuse me, we're just, we're just voting on the amendment to see whether we want to change the dollar figure to trigger a building permit from $5,000 to $8,500. All those in favor of increasing that amount to $8,500 before you need to get a building permit, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. I believe the ayes have it, and the motion, excuse me, the amendment passes, and we have increased the amount to appear on your piece of paper to $8,500. And now we're back to the article itself, Article 22, to see if the town will vote to adopt the amended building permit ordinance as proposed by the Board of Selectmen. There's no further discussion. We'll vote on these changes with the additional modification that it's $8,500 instead of $5,000. All in favor of these changes, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Article 23, to see if town vote to accept a deed from Norgia Inc. for 3 roads as depicted on plan entitled Banfield Hollow Acres for Norgia Inc., approved by the Madison Planning Board June 2004 and recorded at the Carroll County Registry of Deeds in Plan Book 2206, page 815. Roads are as follows: Brookstone Lane, Pebblebrook Lane, and Witten Ledge Lane. The petitioner, if you're a voter, would you like to put that on the floor for us with a motion? Just say so moved.
So moved.
Is there a second? Yeah, there are plenty of seconds. Thank you. Yeah, a name. Yes, sir. Thank you. If you'd like to speak to this article?
Sure. I'd just like to say my name's Jay Bizio. I'm the owner and developer of Banfield Hollow. I'd like to say that it's been 20 years in the making to get to this point. Banfield Hollow is a great neighborhood with wonderful people and very caring people, some of which are involved in town programs of sort. I feel satisfied to have created a neighborhood of this caliber, not only with the people, but the fantastic mountain views that are observed in the rear portion of the development. We have been maintaining Banfield Hall for the past 20 years, and now that it has been completed 100%, it is time to turn it over to the town for acceptance. Not to mention that this neighborhood brings in a fair amount of tax dollars to the town. In closing, I would like to ask the voters to find it in their hearts to vote yes in the acceptance of the 3 roads in Banfield Hollow, which are Brookstone Lane, Pebblebrook Lane, Witten Ledge Lane. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Discussion, yes, sir.
Yes, Paul Marks, Allard Hill Road. I'm the vice chairman of the planning board, and Mark Olson couldn't be here today, he's on vacation. But a clarification on this. The approval of planning board is the approval of the plans for the whole development, not specifically the roads. And he wanted us to point that out. We've approved everything that they've done. Everything is done according to the specifications that were submitted. And just a clarification.
Thank you. The way I read it might have been a little confusing about the way it was phrased. Thank you. That's a good clarification. So the approval that's referred to in the article is the overall plan approval, not specifically that you're recommending this particular article.
It's not the purview of the planning board to accept the roads for the town.
Understood.
It's up to this body.
Thank you. Very helpful. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I have a question regarding how many additional miles or portions of miles would this add to the town's requirement?
Sure. Yeah. Does the petitioner know? 1 mile. Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
What's the financial impact, whether it's to the DPW maintaining roads or upkeep or any kind of maintenance costs to the town to accept the deed?
Of course, parsing that out for 1 additional mile, does anybody have a number they would want to use for that? Yes, sir.
We don't have it here with us.
So we figured it out, it was,
No, she can get somebody else.
so it was $100 per plow, every time it snowed, it cost $100.
to go in, take it out, whether we use sand or salt, and then $200 for the final cleanup on the final, per plow.
Per plow.
Per store for 2 inches of snow.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Can the developer speak to what is there currently for deferred maintenance on the road or proposed upgrades to make it a real town standard road? I mean, there's properties, I'm a realtor, and around the state that I've represented, there's properties that have a mile worth of road that take $1.5 million to bring up to town standards.
So, just to be clear, we wouldn't accept the roads if they didn't meet the town standards upon, we could do that, huh? So, excuse me, I'd like to hear from the developer, if I could, sir. Can you tell us whether you believe the roads meet the standards for acceptance now?
Oh, absolutely. They were designed by White Mountain Survey back in 2003, and they were built over and above what town requires.
So you don't believe there's any immediate need or short-term need for significant investment in those roads to begin maintaining them?
No, they've all been top coated within the last year, and it's ready to go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know if it's appropriate or how you do it, but I'd like to propose that the town have the town road people or an engineer take a look at that road and hold off on voting on this until we have some sort of a certified opinion.
George, if I may.
Yeah.
The town crew has already inspected the roads to make sure they meet the standards. I believe Justin went out and looked and reviewed the plowability and those sorts of things. But I also think it's important to remember that regardless of the number, they will cost us money.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yes,
Moderator.
Yes.
The planning board has gone through this. They've looked at plans, they've examined them, they certified, but we approved that they were built to the specs required by the town.
Thank you.
And that's what was submitted on the original developer for this.
Very good.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
One more question. I just want to make sure, do we have an estimated annual financial impact to the town, and have we budgeted for it?
We just heard from the DPW that it was per plow. Sure. I have a question. So, is it not true that the town can have an obligation to accept a road ever, or is it always the town's option as to whether to accept the road? I am looking at the attorney. He's going to check that for us, but just wanted to check that. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay, take a second. Yes, sir.
George, if I could clarify real quick?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just total financial impact, not just roads. I just want to make sure an idea of total financial impact in addition to anything else that we're not aware of or haven't discussed yet.
For example, would the appraised value of the houses go up because they were on a town road, and would we not collect a little bit more tax money? That is normally why towns do accept roads, is because they get it back by increasing the value of the homes and therefore the amount of taxes collected from them. Yes, sir.
A few years back,
Please speak into the microphone.
not that many years ago, at the top of Colby Hill, we have Peak Vista Lane, and we accepted those roads. That was the last roads we accepted.
Thank you. I mean, this is an ongoing thing that we do. Yes, sir.
Gordon Snyder. I contacted the road agent and then contacted the selectman's office, and the $100 per 2 inches of storm. You've got average snowfall of 78 inches, which translates to $3,900. Figure 15 storms at 200 is another $300 for $6,900, which is slightly less than the voting machine. The tax impact is $1.20 per 100,000. So if you have a $200,000 assessed home, it's $2.40 that you would pay. If you have a $400,000 home, it's $4.80.
Thank you. Yes, sir, in the back.
My concern with it is where does it end? The Meadows, Skyline, Idlewise? Where do we stop accepting more cost upon the other taxpayers in town that have no use for those roads to benefit a few?
Thank you.
Sorry to keep coming up here, but I want to stress one more time. I'm going to be more specific. Laconia, New Hampshire, Plantation, Colonial, and Heritage Drive, total about a mile. Every time that it rains, water is in their drainage system, the ditches. There's culverts. It's a gravel road. I'm not sure what this one is, but it sounds like it's paved. So when the pavement breaks away, when there's drainage issues, it's not just plowing that's an issue. Yep. Not just plowing. But anyways, for probably 30 years, this development has been trying to force Laconia to take over the roads. There's been litigation after litigation, all kinds of different twists trying to force this issue on the town, and they won't take it. Does it impact the real estate value? Not at all. To finance a property on a private road, all you need is an agreement between the landowners, and it doesn't have to cost money. It could be they take turns. It could be that they pay somebody, but it doesn't really impact the price. Being a realtor, I understand this 100%. The taking over the town, making a town road, is a forever, non-rescindable action that when you start adding up the cost, and it's not $6,000 a year, I can promise. It's probably more like $106,000 a year, and by the time you get done, I'm talking about not this year, next year, 20 years from now, to repave that road, it's probably going to be $500,000.
Thank you.
So, I don't want to do it.
Just to be clear, the appraisal system that we will have next year, one of the factors is whether you are on a town road, and it does affect the appraisal. That's why towns do this, accept them. A lot of towns don't, and they oppose them, and there's a cost, and how it comes out depends, but it is definitely a factor in the appraisal, because a house that's on a town road doesn't have to pay for its own maintenance of a private road. So it is a little bit more valuable, and they pay a somewhat higher tax rate as a result. And it is part of the language you'll find in the appraisal books that the appraisers have to follow. What that amount is, that's professional appraisers. Sir, do you want to add something additional?
Yes. Yes, I would. In response to his question about all the drainage, there is no drainage underneath the road. They're all swales on the side of the road with seepage pits every so often, and it's 80 feet of sand in that development. There is when we put a well in, we have to go 600 feet deep, and it's 90 feet to ledge. So it's all sand. There's no water issues. You can't find a rock bigger than a jelly bean out there. It's really ideal condition for a road.
Thank you. Thank you. That you're signaling me something. I don't know what it means.
Me?
Yeah.
No, not you.
Okay. All right. It's cool. There are signals going on. Please.
Linda Haver, Pebblebrook Lane. Full disclosure, I live in Banfield Hollow, the roads that we're asking the towns to accept. I've lived there for 13 years. As I said, I've lived in town for 40. The rest of the time I lived on Forest Pines Road, which is also a mile long. I beg anyone to say that our roads are in such better condition than Forest Pines ever was. And Forest Pines did not start out being a town road. It was taken over by the town. I also want to say that there are other developments in town that were associations, as John Arruda mentioned, that have been taken over by the town. So for the cost, which I believe will be negligible for many, many, many years, it's a matter of fair taxation. You know, why should other developments have the taxes pay for their roads and us not have taxes that pay for roads that are in excellent condition?
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir. If you would.
So the question was, can there be circumstances where a municipality can be required to accept a road? In this context, there's nothing that would compel the legislative body, you folks, to vote one way versus the other. If there were a petition made to the select board to lay out a road, then under those circumstances, there's certain factors that may require the select board to approve the layout, subject to an appeal to the Supreme Court.
Thank you. We are not constrained either way. That's helpful. Yes.
Hi, I'm not opposed to it. I just want to make sure an estimation has been done, an analysis, and that we know what the bottom line is, at least an estimated bottom line of what resources we're committing when taking on this deed. I'm not opposed to it. I just want to make sure the numbers have been run and that the budget is okay with that and the townsfolk are okay with that.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, can we move the question?
I'm going to let the person standing in line speak one more time, and then I'll consider a motion to move the question. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. I believe our roads in Banfield Hollow are already assessed as a Class 5 road. So I don't know if Linda has that information? You do have that information? Okay.
Thank you. There. No. I don't have an answer, and no one is. No. Look, people can ask all the questions they want, and people are really good about responding, but it's not really the obligation of any official to have to respond to any given question. You can ask them, and they might have an answer for you. We've gotten the one answer with regard to the plowing, and we've gotten the answer that the road's been looked at as far as it being up to town standards by the road crew, and they have found it to be in meeting the town standards. Yes, sir.
George, I just want to say there's implications to the way things are said in acts. Nobody's ignoring that question. The straight answer is there's no way of knowing how much this is going to cost in the next year and going forward. There's no way to know. You don't know how much snow is going to fall, how many times they got to go out there. There's just no way to know. The true answer to what you're getting at is there's nothing built into the budget to maintain these roads at this point. The question is, do you want to pass this, then potentially go back and amend an article to add some more money? Because it's not there. There's nothing extra in that budget that would satisfy the maintenance of these sections of road. And there's no money associated with this article.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote. I won't bother with moving the question. So we are prepared to vote on Article 23 to see if the town will vote to accept the deed for the 3 roads as cited in Article 23. All those in favor of Article 23, accepting the roads, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. The ayes appear to have it, and I declare it a vote. Article 23 passes. Article 24, to see if town vote to establish a non-lapsing Veterans Monument Expendable Trust Fund per RSA 3119A for the purpose of maintenance and future upgrades to the Veterans Monument, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 for this purpose, and to further name the selectmen as agents to expend from this fund upon the recommendation of the Veterans Advisory Committee. So I have a motion from a petitioner for this one. Thank you, Ms. Schilling. Is there a second? Yes, sir. Your name? King, thank you. Is there any comment or question? Ms. Schilling, as the lead petitioner, you would speak first.
Yes, Sharon Schilling. I'm also the chairman of the Veterans Services Committee, which is different than the Veterans Advisory Committee. The Veterans Advisory Committee was established and is maintained in order to sort of manage, if you will, the condition and the names and those things that are on the Veterans Fund. This last fall, we petitioned the selectmen because there are names that are missing from that monument for individuals who are veterans in this town who have served in the armed forces. Additionally, there were some errors and we needed to fix those errors. Currently, the selectmen very honorably and agreed, and they took the money out of the unassigned fund balance. So it's almost $10,000. The company's going to come, remove the stone, reface it, and correct it and put it back in place. The reason that I asked for this fund specifically was right now the Veterans Monument Fund has about annually a $500 budget. That is not going to cover the cost for etching even 2 names, let alone the 7 or 8 this year that we have to do. I foresee that there will be additional names as more people move in and out of town. And I would just like to not have to go, or the selectmen to have to go to the unassigned fund balance every time we have a larger expense. I think that this fund would be able to then, year after year, if we wanted to add some additional funds little by little, so that in 5 or 7 years, if we have to add a whole new stone, we have to do some maintenance to that property, that we then have the money already in a fund, a small fund, in order to pay for that. And that the Veterans Advisory Committee could then recommend to the selectmen that we spend that money to do so with, quotes and those kinds of things. That's what the purpose was.
Thank you. Any further discussion or comment? Anybody among the individuals who oppose this
George?
Want to provide explanation? Yes, sir, Mr. Price?
Just a point of clarification that that money didn't come from the unassigned fund balance. I know Donna asked about that earlier, so we want to be clear that we didn't spend any money out of the unassigned fund balance other than the roads. That money was encumbered from the operating budget for money that wasn't spent in other lines. And the money to etch names on that stone is in the patriotic purposes line, and we have never, or not that I am aware of, that we have ever exceeded the money that's allotted. And should we have no problem moving money from other places if it's necessary to make it happen. We're not against fixing the monument when necessary, that's obvious. I just don't see the need for another fund to do so.
Thank you. Any other discussion with regard to Article 24? Yes, sir.
Kind of in line, I thought Adam was going to mention this. We already do have a fund. It's got approximately like $93 in it right now, from where all the funds that were raised to do all the improvements have been done to the memorial site. So there was a mechanism, it already exists, that we could have just added money to. We certainly don't need another account. And as Adam said, we've gotten along all these years, and we've always found the money to add the names that needed to be added when they needed to be added. The mistake that was made was human. It should have been avoided, and that's an expense that we're sucking up, and we're going to take care of all of that this year. But it's unnecessary, and if we did anything at all, we should just add money to the fund that we have.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Danita Dudley, Colby Hill Road. My son is the name on the monument that is spelled incorrectly, and it was done probably 4 or 5 years ago. My son still serves in the military as a Black Hawk pilot, and I would really like to see that monument fixed correctly as soon as possible.
Let the minutes reflect. Thank you very much, Ms. Dudley, and thank you for your son's service. Yes, quickly.
Yeah, I just want to comment that that error and that correction is going to be made. The selectmen did obligate the money. They've talked with the company. I believe that they've already maybe sent a deposit to the company to make that. We had to wait for them to be able to remove the stone in spring as opposed to the middle of winter. But yes, I think everybody agrees that those corrections should be made. I was unaware, I apologize, I was unaware of a Veterans Monument Fund. And when I look in the book, it says we're negative in that fund. I would still, even if we need to change and amend the wording in this particular article to reflect that we raise and appropriate $2,500 to go into that fund, the existing fund. I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that there is money set aside at a periodic rate in order to address any of the upcoming maintenance, upgrades, changes, any of those things that have to be done, that it is there. And I recognize the selectmen have been highly attentive and have, never said no to any of the upgrades or changes and maintenance that needed to be done. I just think having this as a clean place for where that money comes from on a regular basis.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Bob Vaughn, Forest Pines. I just like to emphasize that it'd be nice to go ahead and appropriate this or get the changes done and fix that monument and add the names. I submitted a DD 214 2 years ago with the name of my son, who was a captain in the Army, and I'd like to see his name on there, and I hope that I don't have to wait another 2 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
I just want to make a motion to amend, to add to the existing account.
Okay. So I'm looking at Article 24. Have you written it out by any chance?
I don't know the name of the existing account, no.
Well, see if town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 to be added to the, what's the name of the fund?
Veterans Monument.
To the Veterans Monument Fund.
So are we just removing the words expendable trust?
Well, to see if the town will vote to cross everything out up until to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 for the Veterans Monument Fund, and to further name, no, don't any of it. Yeah. Let's keep it real simple. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 to be added to the Veterans Monument Fund, period. That's what you'd like for the amendment?
Yes.
You got something like that, Mike? You can do better than I did. Okay, sounds good. So that's an amendment. We're only looking at voting on the amendment to add it to the existing fund rather than create a new one. So if we're not speaking to the main article, we're just talking about amending it. All those in favor of amending it to adding the funds to the existing one, say yes, thank you. All opposed, raise your hand. Thank you. The amendment's approved. So, Mr. King here again. Yes. Yes, ma'am. We're now talking about the main article to add
Just
the
a note of
$2,500.
information.
Yes.
The Garden Club in Madison maintains that bushes and what have you.
Yeah. Just
a note.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Nicely done, too. Very noticeable. Okay, so we're about to vote on whether to raise and appropriate $2,500 to go into the Veterans Monument Fund. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Article passes. Article 25, see if the town will vote to require board and committee meetings to begin no earlier than 6 p.m., thus enabling a larger group of people to attend meetings and actively participate in town government. The petitioner, are you a petitioner?
I am.
And would you like to make the motion?
I'd like to move the question.
Ms. McKenna, make the motion. Is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to that motion? Yes, ma'am. I can't remember your last name. Shields. Thank you. Ms. McKenna, if you would briefly like to speak to Article 25.
My reasoning for this article was to open up the town committees and boards to a more diverse group of people. Everyone would like the younger community members to participate in town government. Many of these younger folks are part of the workforce whose jobs are in the 9 to 5 time frame. They cannot run for an office or volunteer for a committee whose meetings happen during their workday. It has that it would be beneficial for the town to have the boards and committees meet later in the day to allow a more representative group of people to participate in town government.
Thank you. Nice and short, to the point. Yes, sir. Mr. Price.
As a member of the younger community, I have no problem attending 4:30 meetings. I think that the biggest problem you're going to run into is a scheduling conflict with the current room that's used by almost all boards and committees trying to meet after 6 o'clock, leaving only a few hours of scheduled time.
Thank you. Yes.
Cheryl Brooks, is this article for every board in town? Because the supervisors, we're technically a board. We meet when the state tells us to meet at the time they tell us to meet. And that sometimes is 10 a.m., that sometimes is 4 p.m. We do what the state says. And also, as far as the younger people in the community volunteering and joining boards, a lot of those people work the 5 to 9 shift. So I don't really know if that really holds true. The younger people that want to participate, I think, do, for the most part. Speaking as someone who used to be young, but well, we'll see. So yeah, so I guess my question is, for boards like, I know the library and whatever, that typically don't meet, when would this take effect? And a board like us, what would we do?
I don't know. I'm sure you would have to fulfill your statutory obligations to do as the state told you, but as I read it, it would apply to all other public open board and committee meetings.
George, is this advisory?
Good question. To see if town will vote to... I'm about to turn to the attorney. The question was, is this advisory only? You know, in other words, can the town, the legislative body, order the executive body to hold their meetings at a particular point in time? The answer is probably not. I think it would be very difficult to enforce it. The attorney does not think it would be enforceable. But our select board and other boards have been very responsive to our votes and requests, and so it's it would place some pressure on them. But no, it is probably advisory only that they change their meeting times. Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Hi.
Sherry Stackpole. I don't consider myself the younger community, but
you are.
I will say that I am never out of work before 5. So I don't necessarily agree that we can just make it there. I watch all the meetings online, so while I'm working. So I would like to see it change, but I'd almost like to see an amendment for it to just be the select board at 5:30. That's my personal opinion.
Okay. Well, you have a right to make that amendment if you choose. Yes, sir.
Bob Boyd again. I just wanted to point out I have to run the Joint Loss Management Committee, which is basically a safety committee. So that's made up of town employees where we discuss safety issues in different departments. And it's much more convenient to meet for an hour one morning every quarter than it would be to try to do it at 7 or 8 o'clock at night or whatever.
But that is technically a public meeting that you're
It is
holding?
a public meeting, yes. The announcements are posted.
Thank you.
So just to point that out.
Yes, sir. Mr. Morrow.
Just from the other side of the coin, I believe there's many residents of the town that don't go out after that hour, that don't go out after 6 o'clock, and they would be limited to attending meetings. So we have to consider them also, not just the young people.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Gordon Snyder. I vote to amend to take out require and substitute encourage when feasible.
Okay. Is there a second to Mr. Snyder's motion? Yes, Ms. Bayou.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Didn't we already have an amendment on the floor to change the time to 5:30?
No, she didn't make that amendment formally. Yeah. Yeah. To see if the town will vote to...
Instead of require, encourage when feasible.
Encourage when feasible.
That's ambiguous. Or we could put desirable if people prefer desirable.
In any case, so I have a motion and I have a second to change it to amend it to change required to encourage when feasible. And keep in mind, this is advisory only, and certainly the gist will come through as a result of this vote, one way or the other. Yes, to see if the town will vote to encourage when feasible board and committee meetings to begin no earlier than 6 p.m. If there's no further discussion, we will vote on the amendment, whether to change required to encourage when feasible. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. The ayes have it, and we will encourage when feasible, as opposed to require if we pass this. So now we're about to vote on the article itself.
I missed the move and second on it.
Okay, the motion was by Mr. Snyder, and the second was by Ms. Vayu.
Slater.
Mr. Slater.
That's Mrs.
I'm sorry. The gentleman who made the motion to go to encourage rather than whatever is Mr. Snyder, is it not? Yes. So, I'm sorry. Boy, not only is the attorney after me, but you are too. This is just brutal, and I'm right all the time. Yes, sir.
Yes, Bill Dempster. I have a question. In the way this warrant article was written, it said nothing about advisory, and all of a sudden it's become advisory. I'd like to ask the person that on the petition that put forth whether that was her intent or not.
Doesn't matter. So the ruling by your moderator with the support of your town attorney is that a motion like this is by definition advisory because the legislative branch of government doesn't have the authority to require that the executive branch of government hold their meetings at a given time. It'd be like the Congress telling Joe Biden when to go to bed. I'm sorry, that's probably inappropriate, but it's something
I'm not going there, Mr. Moderator.
No, okay, all right. People didn't even laugh at that. This is way too touchy a group. So we are about to vote on the actual article. And the article is to see if the town will vote to encourage when feasible board and committee meetings to begin no earlier than 6 p.m., thus enabling a larger group of people to attend meetings and actively participate in town government. All those in favor of Article 25, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. I knew we'd have a standing vote. I'm going to do it one more time, see if I can see a difference. All those in favor of Article 25, raise your hand. Keep it up. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. I'm sorry, I think the ayes have it. You people, you want to challenge it? Too close. Okay, all right. Okay, we're going to have a standing vote. We're going to do it as quickly as we possibly can. I'm going to ask Becky and somebody else to divide the room in half and to run around the room counting people. So please stand if you are in favor of Article 25. Please stand. Do not count me. Please stand if you're in favor of Article 25.
Nobody goes to those either, so just
People in the back of the room, figure out how to position yourself. You have a number? You can say it out loud.
From my side, 27.
27. And from the other side, did you send somebody over there? Oh, I told you to assign somebody. All right. Jeez. Sir, yeah, you look like you can count. Yeah. Would you count this side here? Just your side. Get the people in the back of the room. And make sure you got Budget Committee members. How many do you have? 27. Okay, 27 and 27. I can add those too. Please sit. Don't you sit yet. because we're now going to count the nays. All those opposed to Article 25, please stand. Yeah, that's what I thought on the hand raise.
Don't forget to count George. He's standing.
Don't count me. '23. So Article 25 passes 54 to 45. 54 to 45. Definitely worth a standing count. Much appreciated, counters, and I'll do better assigning counters. So Article 25 passes as amended. Encourage when feasible. Article 26, to see if Town Madison will vote to approve guest parking pass use at the foot of the lake beach. Passes would be sold at Town Hall and be valid Monday through Friday, July 1 through Labor Day. Also valid on any day the remainder of the year for parking only in the overflow lot located across the street from the beach, subject to the availability of spaces. Passes shall have date in ink written on front, single use, and be displayed on dashboard of vehicle. It's by petition. Could a petitioner put the motion on the floor?
I put it on the floor.
So moved. Okay. Ms. Nordland, and is there a second to this motion? A second from Ms. Hayford. Okay. Thank you. Would you speak to the article?
Sure. I believe our parking pass regulations were changed around lockdown time, 2020, 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and it became really important for kids to get to see their friends, and their friends live in other towns, especially the preteen and teen set. Okay, we send all our kids to one middle school, we send them all to one high school, yet we tell them they can't recreate together if their parents have to hang out together while they're doing so safely while swimming. And if you have a child in Madison, I'm sure I'm not alone in this experience, they want to go only to the foot of the lake beach. If you tell them, well, today we're meeting up with this family from Conway, let's go to the head of Lake Beach, they don't want to. The float is there, there's other families there, so it became really a kind of a struggle. And what happened over this course of this summer was that I had a local teacher come in and say, hey, did you know that when I got out of work today in September on a Wednesday, I had my friend go and meet me for a bite down at the foot of Lake Beach. She got a $100 ticket because she doesn't live in Madison. It's a Wednesday in September, there's nobody else there. It also happened to a local grandmother who was taking her 3 Madison grandkids to the beach while the parents worked. It also happened to a local woman whose adult kids and grandkids were coming back after being raised here, and it was off time. It wasn't the weekend. It wasn't a busy July Saturday, and they had to also move. And it's during times that there's no competition for spaces that it seems a real struggle for Madison families to meet with other families that are also in the valley and want to recreate down there. We have a local family with a full-time caregiver for their kids while they're at work, and their kids want to meet with their other friends down at the foot of Lake Beach. We're there almost every day, and the caregiver can't get them there because they don't have the sticker on their car because the caregiver doesn't live in Madison. So to me, introducing this bill is a way to find a middle ground where on non-busy times, in September, October, June, May, nice heat wave in May. It's only really a few handful of locals that want to jump in the water. And during the week in the summer, if possible, to use the overflow lot only, subject to availability, and a little, have to buy the tickets for their friend. I brought it up at the time of the change, and it just got, shot down as an idea to make, kind of find the gray area and be able to their kids can see their friends. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments or questions on Article 26? Yes. Microphone. Yeah.
I asked the question, so what do the other towns do? So what happens when the Madison kids want to go to Conway, because you're not going to park there? So I'm just saying that you're enacting something that's going to be a burden to enforce. You say use the overflow parking lot when it's available. Well, it won't be available if they're all parked in it. It won't be available to town residents that have stickers. So I think you're entering back into an area that shouldn't have been in the first place. Those passes were passed around from person to person. You're going to stamp a date on it and put it on the dashboard, and then the officer is going to have to get out of his car, go to the dashboard, look at the date, see if it's there. They're going to get a ticket. They're not going to get a ticket. They're going to be at town hall opposing the citation. I just don't think it's a feasible idea.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am? Yeah, no, you're next, Ms. Hayford.
I was the grandmother that she was talking about. Both my kids spent their summers at the lake. They're grown now. They live out of town. One of them came back. I could not, she has 3 children. I have a Forester. Can't fit everybody in my car. So we took 2 vehicles down. Allison Risch and her family was there. My ex-husband was there, and I was there. 3 cars on a Thursday night at 7 o'clock. And she was asked to move her car, so we had to leave. The parking lot was empty. We say we're a small town that embraces, like, you know, the small community. This doesn't embrace that. I don't see how this ticket issue, I mean, they did that when the town hall had half the number of people in it that it does now. They distributed them years ago. So I have to speak up for, I would like my children to be able to come with my grandchildren and us go to the lake without it being a stressful event.
Thank you. Mr. Dempster?
If you'd like to go, I'll let you go.
Bethany Morehouse. I understand the logistics of buying tickets, but if there's already a police officer down there monitoring, is there another way to tag it? Like, instead of giving her a $100 ticket, can we verify that this is a Madison family with guests, and instead of giving out a $100 ticket, if the police officer's already down there, giving them a $10 ticket. Now they are required to pay. He's not doing anything he's not already doing. He's simply giving a variety. If this is an out-of-towner, if this is somebody without a Madison sticker, if the police are down there finding them for being where they're not supposed to be, I fully support that. But if this is a Madison family represented with a Madison person, giving them just a varied ticket might be an option to still have to pay for it. But if there's 3 cars parked there, it's pretty easy to verify that this is a Madison family with a guest.
Thank you.
That's just an option.
Thank you.
Bill Dempster, 157 Doe Drive. Please don't egg my house after I say what I'm going to say, because I'm going to take a hard line on this. And I'm going to say no. I, as a town resident, really appreciate to have a town-only beach where I can go with my family, with my grandkids, and go down there and not have to worry about fighting for parking spaces, fighting for people who don't live here. And I'm sorry if people take offense to that, because quite honestly, I don't care. This is a privilege of living in this town. We have this lake, we're selling it out, a resource that we have for the town people. There are other beaches in the town, and I'm just afraid that it's going to be an absolute mess with a lot of out-of-towners taking up spaces. We're looking to start a swimming program. Where are the kids going to go if the beaches are full? Town residents. So I am against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Mr. Arruda?
I'm not diametrically opposed to this, except, as most of you know, I work at the transfer station, and a big part of what I do is checking tickets. And I got people handing their tickets to somebody else, and they come up, oh, this is not my car, this is my cousin's car. And I'm trying to keep a lid on the transfer station. I can't imagine what it's going to be to sell tickets or collect tickets, or when are they going to come to town hall because they're not open on Fridays. Do we then give tickets for July 1st, 2nd, 3rd? Do we give tickets for August 15th? The administrative staff is going to be writing tickets for all kinds of guests. And they're going to have to check their validity. But I just know that in checking tickets, it's a major function of my job. And I hear all kinds of stories about why my ticket isn't here, or why my ticket is, oh, it's in the glove box, oh, it's in the console. I hear that all day long. So we're going to be adding that problem to the next problem.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
This actually goes back way before the pandemic.
Introduce yourself to
I'm
everyone.
sorry, Bob King, Tamworth, Chief of Police. So this actually goes back before the pandemic. This went back to 2019 when I was on the Board of Selectmen. And the reason why is actually when I started. And the reason why I started is because I was looking for a place living here in Madison to go to the beach, and I couldn't find a parking spot because they were, it was flooded with renters and of the like that had taken every last spot of the main parking lot, the parking lot down by the bathhouse, as well as across the street and even down the road. So what we changed was to eliminate the ability for those types of people to have it as part of their rental program, and to really limit it for the residents to be able to use their beach, because when I did find a parking spot that day, I parked next to a vehicle that had one of the guest parking passes. It was for a rental. It was laminated by packing tape on a 3-foot by 12-inch pine board and stuck on the window. So even that $2 parking pass was handed from person to person to person. And it was kind of infuriating to try to go on a summer day with my daughter, and I couldn't park. As far as the enforcement goes, now that this is in effect, one, the residents that do use the beach have never been happier with it. It has been used by the residents unencumbered by looking for parking spots. And as far as us writing tickets for grandmothers, we actually have discretion on who we write the ticket to, and we use that discretion every day. There have been questions to me, and one of the prior speakers here have asked once, my daughter wants to come, she's from out of town, she's visiting, is it okay if we go to the beach on this day at this time? And I said, yes, that's fine. We will look for that. We are the ones that give those discretionary tickets. But we've also seen tickets that have been ripped off other cars and placed on others. We've seen the cars that were bought from somebody else and that sticker maintained on that car so they could use it here. We've seen people that have moved out of town with Conway and Freedom stickers on their car, and even the Madison one still at the bottom. And to John's point, we actually had to deal with Home Depot because somebody took one of their rental trucks and got a hold of a Madison sticker and stuck the Madison town sticker on the windshield so they could use the transfer station with one of Home Depot's trucks. So it has been quite encumbersome for the town residents here to use that beach. The method that's in place now did help alleviate that, and it is working, in my mind, smoothly. And if there has to be some sort of discretionary measure, you have some sort of guest coming, or you're having a family event, we give exceptions every year for Old Home Week. When the events are ongoing, we don't enforce that. And generally, we don't enforce before May 1st or after Labor Day as well. If you have an issue with a ticket, you can appeal it to me. If you don't like my decision, you can go to the selectmen and appeal it there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Vayu.
Yeah, Mike Vayu. There's a number of solutions. First of all, regarding the beach, there's no restriction on who goes to the beach. So anybody can go. When young people are trying to pursue something that they're interested in, they're usually quite creative. One thing you can do, is park up the road. There's multiple places to park where there are no parking signs. There's no obligation to be a resident when you park there. I think the key that a lot of people are wondering is the available parking for the resident in the parking area. I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but there are a lot of options with the current system.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to vote on Article 26. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the guest parking pass process as described in Article 26, please raise your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. The nays appear to have it. I declare it a vote. Excuse me. Article 27, see if the town of Madison will vote to approve the adoption of New Hampshire Statute RSA 79F, taxation of farm structures and land under farm structures in an effort to support our farming community. This statute has been adopted in many New Hampshire towns statewide in an effort to encourage preservation of productive farms and associated structures. Farming in New Hampshire has a long and proud history which shaped our state's landscape. It is further declared to be in the public interest to prevent the loss of farms and their associated structures due to property taxation as values incompatible with their usage. Do I have a motion to put it on the floor from my petitioner? Just, are you a petitioner?
She's the main petitioner.
Are you
Yes.
a voter?
Yes,
Julie Shields, I'd like to make a motion to...
Okay, and are you the seconder?
yes.
Thank you very much. Please feel free. And your name is Mr. Shields?
Tom Head, Windcroft
Head.
Lane. I'm sure you're all familiar.
Remember, 2 minutes.
With RSA 79F, but for those of you who are not, I thought I'd give a brief synopsis. So the qualifying farm structures that would be, you would have to have, it's similar to current use. You would have to have 10 acres, continuous, and the farm structures would have to house livestock, store feed, store livestock bedding, store crops or fertilizer, store farm equipment, boil sap from maple trees, and store fuel wood used to boil the sap. And essentially, just as current use, if the structures were pulled out, the taxes, the back taxes would then be owed. Thank you.
Thank you. So this existing state law, would we like it to apply to Madison? We have the option to have it apply to us or not. That's what this is a vote about. Any further discussion with regard to Article 27? Seeing none, we will vote. All those in favor of Article 27, please raise your hand. Thank you. All opposed? Thank you. Short presentation worked very effectively. I hope everyone learned from that. Article 28, we've done. Article 29. Okay, and so Articles 29 through 33 total up to the following number, if you want to jot it down. They total $26,304. $26,304 for charitable purposes. And we as a town have frequently simply voted on them as a group. And I'm going to ask the selectmen if they'd like to put those articles on the floor as a group. Mr. Morrow, Mr. Arruda, excuse me, doesn't mean you can't pull one out. It doesn't mean you can't ask that one be voted on separately. It doesn't mean you can't vote against them. But we are considering whether we want to make these donations to these organizations as listed. I'll say the name: Meals on Wheels, Starting Point, Tri-County Community Action, Children Unlimited, their Family Resource Center, and the White Mountain Community Health Center. Those are the organizations that would be receiving these donations. Are there any discussions, any discussion with regard or amendment or change anyone would like to make? Seeing none, will, yes?
I just have a question with regard to, I'm sorry, I didn't bring my numbers. If someone could let us know, is this an increase from last year's warrant articles, or is this ostensibly the same?
It's a decrease by roughly $1,200.
A decrease by roughly $1,200. Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, we will vote on Articles 29 through 33 for a sum of $26,304. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Thank you. And the motion passes, and those articles are all passed. Is there any further business someone can't just hold on to? Seeing none, Mr. Lord, would you like to move to adjourn the meeting? And I don't think you need a second because you're that important. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. I apologize I wasn't faster, but you did a great job. Thank you all.
Remember that time we were going to assign different parts of this to everybody, and I got all of them? Oh, I don't remember. Some people did. Wow.
Yeah, you did get all of them. Good job, Adam.
Right?
I heard some kids out in that playground, though.
I know. I waved to my wife like 3 times.
She just went out there now. It's long. Oh, you're welcome. I always thought libraries are important. And I didn't think that we should have to.
Please help. Whoop, I've been turned off. Please help yourself to any of the remaining food on the back table. They don't want to carry it home. Go grab the freebies. But you can give them money, too.
I need some cookies. Good, go get some.
All right, I don't have official coverage. I've been in contact. Hi. I'm listening, sorry. I've been in contact with Bob this week. Yeah.